First up on the agenda is discussion of the regular agenda items and the consent agenda items. So we'll go ahead and council, we're going to move on to public hearing 1, consideration of an ordinance granting a special use permit for commercial amusement on approximately 3.175 acres. Any questions or comments on that one?
Can somebody just clarify for the cameras and the public exactly what is allowed in light industrial? I know the answer, but I would like it.
We're actually going to do a whole presentation.
Are we?
A short
Okay.
presentation out there so that the public can hear that.
Okay. You good with that, Councilmember Kate? Public hearing number 2, consideration of the proposed fiscal year 23-24 fee schedule. There should have been a redlined version in your packets, but if there are questions. Oh, it's in the memo, sorry.
The memo has the comparison. Yeah, the memo on item 14 has all
Memo
the
on
comparison.
14. Okay. Item 3, public hearing, consideration of the proposed tax rate of the 2023 tax year. Item F, consent agenda. Item 4, approval of the First Amendment to interlocal agreement among the City of Lewisville, Town of Flower Mound, and City of Highland Village. This is the new fire tower. Item 5, design build amendment number 1 to the owner designer builder agreement for construction services on the fire training structure. Any questions on that one? Item 6, approval of the agreement for award of transportation development credits. Thanks to the RTC for working on that. Item 7, Lakeside Crossing PID assessment tax billing. Item 8, approval of contract award for holiday decorations. 9, approval of a resolution authorizing the addition of 3 firefighter, 2 police, and 1 jailer, and 1 public safety.
Just to point out that this is not additional overfilling, this is just, we do this every year with budget. So these are the same positions, overfill positions you guys have approved before.
So, and I know we talk about this every year and I always forget a little bit. Is this because if a position's not filled that it gets cut during budget, or what, why are we add these back in?
No, so
Remind me again.
So this is especially when you end up having, you have to send police officers, firefighters to training, and so then they're not really bodies on the street, and so then you can overfill to be able to compensate for that. Or if you know, like for example, the fire department, we know some retirements are coming up, you can overfill so that even though they're gonna be retiring in the next, let's say 6 months, we don't have to go back out for hiring at that point.
And this is just a formality, it's done every year.
Yes.
Item 10, authorizing agreement regarding disbursement of grant funds, CDBG. Do we know what the $21,000 reduction was based on?
Ashley?
So there's a HUD allocation, their formula every year is dependent on population and income.
Okay, so do you think Castle Hills annexation maybe skewed that a bit? Okay. Item 11, acceptance of 2 resignations for animal services. And we do have one of those.
We have place 3. The ordinance and stuff will allow us to go out for the 2 statutory places. And I want to thank Chris McGinn and his staff and Liz for getting this so quickly done so we could start filling those positions.
G, regular hearing. 12, consideration of an ordinance for the budget. Item 13, ordinance adopting the tax rate. Item 14, amending the fee schedule. Item 15, ordinance for changing the Animal Services Advisory Committee requirements. that they have to be a citizen or business owner, and Councilmember Kay just referred to that. It basically means that those are statutorily required by the state. This just lets us get a bigger pool of applicants because we've had some difficulty finding those particular qualifications as required by the state. That's the last of the agenda items. Any other comments or questions before we move back into item B? All right. Item B is discussion of Castle Hills solid waste collection. And who's driving the car there on that one?
Jason Hunt.
Great.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. So it looks like you guys have a full agenda plus some, so I want to jump on in. So we're going to have a discussion over a topic that typically, from the residents' point of view, is in the back burner. It's not thought about much unless one of two things happen. That would be one, there's an issue or a problem, or two, there's a change. So currently, the contracts within the city of Lewisville, we have two separate contracts, both were put in place prior to annexation. For public services with Legacy Lewisville, all the while community waste disposal, or CWD, with Castle Hills area. So I'm going to present a few options up for direction tonight. Because ultimately there is a change that will happen, so we just need to decide if we want to make that change sooner or make that change later. So we're going to talk about both contracts, kind of how they line up, some important dates amongst each one. And then we're going to spend most of our time on the residential service and how these may or may not affect the residents. Just for an FYI, we're going to talk about some service enhancements, or essentially add-ons to the current Republic Services contract, just to make you aware of them that we're not currently utilizing, but they are out there as an option. Then we're going to talk about the implementation plan, depending on what route we'd like to take. And then lastly, of course, this will affect our commercial business owners here in the city of Lewisville, mainly in the Castle Hills area, so we'll touch base on that as well. So back in April 2017, that is when Castle Hills contracted, or I guess the Virginia County Freshwater Supply District contracted with community waste disposal. A few years later, that is when the city of Lewisville contracted with Republic Services. And of course, November 2021 is the annexation date. There was a lot of moving pieces, of course, for several years prior, and still going on to this day. So there is some contract language, some verbiage in the Republic Services contract that says, hey, city, if you want to basically go with any existing contracts that are currently in place, we can. So the city decided at that time to do that, just to limit the impacts on the Castle Hills area Lewisville residents. So that orange mark right there is where we're at today, and as you can see, there's a few things right around the corner on the horizon. In April 22, that is when we did a 2-year extension of the CWD contract. That will come up in April of 2024. So I'm going to show out a few options. Our options are to let that lapse and take everything under Republic Services. If we do that, we would need to notify CWD at least 90 days in advance. Or we can also renew those contracts where there's 3 one-year option renewals available. So we can take advantage of those 3 one-year options. That would take us through April 2027. So ultimately at that point, it would terminate the CWD contract and Republic Services would ultimately take over. So that's, I guess, direction that we're looking for. Whether we should do this sooner, or maybe if now is not the great time, then we'll do it later down the road. The Republic Services contract is through 2030 with a 10-year extension after that point. So here's kind of what the 2 contracts look side by side. You can see that the first thing that pops out is 2 pickups per week in the Castle Hills area versus 1 pickup per week. So that, of course, the residents have been used to that from at least 2017, if not before. Residential recycling is one and the same at 1 pickup per week. Bulky yard waste, currently 3 cubic yards per week for Legacy Lewisville, and it is 2 cubic yards per week as well. It says per month, but from when the contract was initially activated in 2017, it has been a weekly service, even though the contract states monthly. Just point that out. As far as landfill privileges, Legacy Lewisville can go 2 disposals per month here at the Camelot Lewisville landfill, as opposed to 1 per month drop-off or disposal at the CWD facility down in Dallas. You can see the rates are different as well. Under Republic Services, there is a senior citizen rate as well. And we did a few weeks ago receive a request for a rate increase from Community Waste Disposal, which would be effective next month, October 23, to increase to $25.43. As far as cost adjustment, there is some language in the Republic Services contract that caps at 5% per year and 4% or 15% over 4 consecutive years. And then there's no such language in the CWD contract. Lastly, there is a disabled and elderly carryout for all citizens anywhere in Lewisville that everyone is taking advantage of. They set that up in advance, and they can, the vendor will go grab the cart, whether it's at their front door, side yard, garage door, service it and take it back, so the resident doesn't have to actually take it to the curb. Next slide.
What's the age on that?
Yeah.
Why are y'all laughing? Wasn't for me.
Senior citizen, so
I know.
you can take that as you wish.
Mr. Hunt, if you could just pause for just 1 second. Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
your bulk pickup, is that advertised once a month, or do they just effectively pick it up throughout the month?
So, I don't know, I don't have much bulk, but I know I put grass clips and stuff out and it could disappear.
Okay.
I did have to call Claire, I think, and say, I've got a sofa, what's my rules? People don't know.
Yeah.
They just kind of call.
So both contracts are effectively picking up weekly, okay.
Yeah, and honestly, I did confirm with CWD directly that from the get-go, if you purchase a home in Castle Hills area, you're given a packet of information and it states clearly weekly pickup.
Okay. Thank you.
So we have 3 options we're going to present. Option 1 is the status quo option. That would be renew the CWD contract for 1 year. There would be no change, of course, for any residents as far as pickup days, frequency. Castle Hills area would still be twice per week versus once per week. Just note that it is a 1-year renewal, and they're built in up to 3 years renewal. So ultimately, in 2027, this would no longer be an option, which we would have to look at option 2 or 3 at that point. So option 2 is kind of our hybrid option, if you will. What this option looks like would take everything under Republic Services, notify CWD, that contract would ultimately terminate. The intent of option 2 is to limit the impact on the Castle Hills area. And so those Lewisville residents over there who are getting twice per week would, of course, go to once per week. However, we would try to pick one of the 2 days, so that way they at least have one less thing to think about. And that would be in effect for 80% of the Castle Hills area, except there would be 20% would be affected in which they would have this new Wednesday pickup that's not existent to date. And the intent of that is just to evenly distribute amongst the Castle Hills area 20% for public services sake. So option 3 would be kind of the long-term, long-range, citywide reroute. It would be even distribution. Essentially what this looks like was within 1 to 2% difference of all 5 zones. So essentially very similar number of pickup days throughout. Of course, this would lead for positives for sustainability, efficiency for the residents and the contractor as well. And we'll go over some more pros and cons about all these options here in a second. So option 3, which is again the complete citywide reroute, that would affect more residents than any of the other options. So what this overlay here is showing is anything in purple is going to have a different pickup day than it does today. So we're looking at 30%, 31% or so of current Republic Services Legacy Lewisville versus 42% citywide, and of course that would affect essentially all of the Castle Hills area since they're changing to some extent. So here's our direction slide. I'm going to quickly go over the 3 options. That way you guys can discuss and ask questions. So option 1 is our status quo option. We're going to continue with CWD for a 1-year extension, up to 3-year extensions. There would be no change to any resident. It does, the cons to this one, there's somewhat of a silo effect amongst the 2 areas that most of which have gone away, but this is one of those areas that's kind of just still there because it's 2 separate contracts. And again, we would have to reassess this at 2 more additional years after this because it's only valid for 3 years total. Option 2 is our hybrid option. Everything would go under Republic Services. We would let the CWD contract lapse. We would be going from 2 to 1 pickup days for the Castle Hills area. is not ideal for sustainability. We would still have, you could potentially be a Castle Hills area homeowner. You're getting more trucks across your street essentially versus option 3. Some privileges for the Castle Hills area though would include landfill privileges, which they do not have currently, increased bulk amount slightly from 2 to 3 weekly, and then a price reduction in the monthly fee. And then option 3 is the citywide even distribution reroute. There would be, of course, a higher change in percentage for all Lewisville residents compared to the other options, 40% citywide. Of course, there's main thing to look at here is sustainability benefits. Those trucks wear and tear on the roads and alleyways. Balance service, balance rates, of course, in the same pros as option 2 for the Castle Hills area. So I guess at this point, we could go back one more slide. This is kind of our topic slide, so if you guys want to discuss amongst yourself, have questions, comments, thoughts.
I have a question.
Yes.
So right now, some people have 2 bins and not 1 bin. There might need to be some with 3. Is there a limited number of bins you can have? I'm thinking about my neighbors who might be upset that we went from 2 to 1. Can they get an additional bin?
Correct.
To compensate?
Yes, there is an additional fee. Initially, it is 1 bin plus 2 trash containers, essentially, but there is an additional fee.
Okay.
That can be added on.
Okay, how much is that additional fee?
I don't recall.
I can look that up.
Good, thank you.
I think the bins are gonna be larger probably than
They are larger.
what you currently have.
I think they're huge right now, those green
Right.
bins.
Those big ones, I mean, when we went to once a week, I was not happy, but the bins are a lot larger than they were.
Okay, so in 2000,
And they're a lot sturdier than they ever were. Mine are. Well, I don't throw mine.
The one concern I have is, so they constantly tear up, Republic constantly tears up the bins that they have, and which it happens. But calling them, there was one 1-800 number, and it just went into a customer service line and into an infinite loop where I never got anything done. So I had to go to the city to actually get my torn up bin replaced. Have they fixed that?
yeah, so I would say 80% of issues, missed pickups, whatever the issue may be, I found 80% are going directly to Republic Services versus maybe 20% or less coming directly to the city. Yeah, it is an issue that, I know with COVID, a lot of their staff did have an in-house staff, but now some are working from home, but it seems like that has improved, the customer service side. But that's the good news, is we do have a city staff that we have a contract manager we work directly with, so if there are issues, they're really quick to resolve.
So just to be clear, the resident will be able to resolve it via, because it was a.
No, we have a city staff that will take over and make sure it gets it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And it is confirmed about $6 for an additional. Yeah, option 3, I forgot to mention, this is the staff's recommendation option from our point of view. And in 2014, as you mentioned, Lewisville did go from 2 to 1 pickup. So of course there's a transition period, of course, when you make the changes.
Some still have a transition.
I mean, I think it's interesting that there was a big kerfuffle when we went from 2 to 1, and it turned out to be much ado about nothing, because most people, like, when you're recycling, you don't have that much trash. And once, I mean, the only time I think is maybe a challenge is Thanksgiving and Christmas, so.
I think as long as there's an option for additional bin, which will still be cheaper than what we have today, I don't think so. I can manage that, we can manage that. Kerfuffle, I think that might pop up. It will pop up, it'll definitely, I think that's
Well,
something
anytime
that
there's
that's not gonna get
change,
thought, but that's okay,
it's
it's
gonna pop
change.
up.
And I think it's the right thing to do. I don't have concern about we manage that conversation.
So is option 3, I guess, more efficient as well, as far as?
Yes, sir. Yeah, from the city's perspective, wear and tear on the roads, and from the vendor's perspective as well. Less trucks going all over the place.
Unfortunately, I'm in that change, but that's okay.
I'm in that change too.
Other questions? I've got a few. Are the vehicles in both contracts automatic side loaders by now, or do we still have some rear collection for bins
Recycling is all automatic side loaders.
in both contracts?
I believe so.
Okay.
I can double check on the CWD. As far as solid waste, it's still kind of a transition period. There's some that are side loading, some that are not.
Okay. Are the cart sizes the same in Castle Hills as the ones here in Lewisville? I think we've got 96 gallon toters.
We do have 96.
And does Castle Hills CWD have the same size, or are they smaller?
I believe they're the same size. I'll have to double check.
As far as the contract information on that, I don't expect you to have an answer on this one, but some contracts the city buys and owns, other contracts the resident buys and owns. I'd like to know if there's any difference between the two contracts in that regard,
As far as the bins themselves?
as far as the bins themselves.
Yes, sir. So Republic Services owns the solid waste and the recycling bins. CWD, I believe, owns the trash, but not the recycle.
But not the bins.
Or it's vice versa. Yeah, the bins.
Okay.
They own the recycle bin, but not the trash bin. So
Trash bin, okay.
if you live in Castle Hills, you could, if you wanted to, I guess, keep the trash bin itself. But Republic Services, if that switch was made, wouldn't service it as a Republic Service.
Right.
Just cover it up with black duct tape.
Well, and the replacement is a question, right? If I own the bin, it's my bin, I'm going to Home Depot to pick up a new bin. Whereas if Republic owns it or the city owns it, there's a consistency of product out on the street and a consistency of design is my understanding, so. Okay. Do we have a collection rate on each day for Castle Hills? And if not, I'd like to get that. So if you pick up at my house on Monday, you're gonna know you picked up on Monday and you're gonna know, well, you're gonna know how many pickups you do on Monday and you're gonna know how many pickups you do on Thursday. And I wanna know if there's a delta between those two, if that's okay. There's an efficiency there. And then I'd also be interested in the recycling tonnage per resident coming out of Castle Hills and for Republic. Just wanna see how recycling is being used.
Yeah, I do know on the Republic side, it's about a 40% participation rate as far as residential recycling. And that number seems to stay pretty consistent each month.
So participation rate on both the garbage and recycling, based on day for Castle Hill specifically. Just we don't have that here, so I don't have to worry about it here. And then I'd like to get specifically the recycling tonnage, and what that is as an average.
Yeah, we can definitely get that. For public services wise, we get a monthly report that gives us all that information, but we can definitely easily get that.
Yeah, I'd like to get that for both sides, so that'd be great. Other than that, I drove as part of council when we made that transition, and yeah, there was a bit of gnashing of teeth, but the newer carts, the less having to deal with people bringing out their own carts, and the lesser quality that they couldn't buy a commercial cart typically. They typically bought something less. Granted, we weren't using the ASLs, which half of the problem is that those ASLs get really grabby and can crush the can. But I think that's important that we have, there's a consistency of look. I think there's a safety thing when you have that many vehicles roaming around the neighborhoods. And are you going to be talking about the commercial options on this?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Have a slide.
So those are my questions that I've got right now.
You sparked a couple more questions I want from mine real quick. So, and you may have asked this, Mayor, the recycling bins, we used to have these tiny little totes that were recycling, they always overflowed. Are these the same as what we have in Castles right now, which are the big blue, they're about probably 80% the size of the full size, the same bins basically?
Republic's the same size as trash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both 96.
All right, and then how does that swap out happen with the bins?
You set them out one day, they empty them, and then they take them.
They disappear.
And then a new one shows up?
Yeah, they have a truck.
I was trying to figure out how I throw away a trash bin, I was trying to figure that out.
If you've ever tried to throw away a trash bin, it is a really difficult thing to do.
I tried to throw it away.
Yeah, they
kept giving it back to me. I'm trying to throw it away, this is like a little toes.
I had to take a white marker, put trash, all the time.
Box cutter.
Yeah.
Box cutter to turn it into bits. All right. Mr. Hunt, please go on ahead.
So these are some service enhancements or add-ons to the Republic Services contract that we're not currently utilizing, just want to make everyone aware of. There is a yard waste diversion program. Essentially what that is if you, how it is today, any yard waste, whether it be tree limbs, leaves, shrubs, it's going to the landfill, just like any other solid waste or garbage. So what this does, it's $3.89 per month on the resident's bill, so that goes directly to the vendor from the resident. And it will go to a reuse or composting facility. There's Living Earth in Flower Mound is the one closest by, but there's also one in Dallas that they utilize as well. Secondly, there's a household hazardous waste and electronics doorside collection program. So with Republic Services, how this works is it's $1.44 per month. The resident schedules 1 to 2 weeks in advance a bin, a kit. They would pack any household hazardous waste, which are those items that should not be going to the landfill. It could be old batteries, fluorescent lights, automotive fluids, paints, whatnot, and electronics, of course, and they will schedule that. And I will say CWD currently has that rolled into their monthly rate as well. They have a monthly doorside household hazardous waste program for the Castle Hills area.
So that's included in Castle Hills, correct?
Currently, it's included in Castle Hills, and this would be an add-on for Public Services.
Okay.
We do have an in-house city-operated HHW electronics program. It's the Wednesday and Friday mornings and the third Saturday of every month. Citizens can schedule a collection and then dispose of it with the city. And that is not a line item on their utility bill. It comes out of the utility fund. And then lastly, there is an unlimited yard waste, bulky waste collection. So with Republic Services, it would essentially get rid of that 3 cubic yard cap and have an unlimited amount. It wouldn't change anything other than the amount collected.
Questions on these, council?
Yeah, so the household hazard waste, I want to make sure I understand this. So currently today, with the public, to go that direction, how is HHW disposed of it? You got to take it down to the yourself, or?
Yeah, so today we have a city staff, and that's essentially over half their job. They schedule with the residents Wednesday and Friday mornings. They coordinate with the residents. We have a fund already set in place for the utility fund. They drop it off free of charge, and the city disposes of it.
Where does it get dropped off at?
Various places. Electronics, we have a couple vendors. They salvage them.
I guess the question I have, is there a resident driving their HHW to somewhere else?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, over on Jones Street, beside the water plant, we have a facility.
I would love to know how often that's being used today.
Yeah, I asked that question. It's not widely utilized, honestly. It's 1% or less.
Now, what's 1% currently with CWD or currently with?
So the door side,
Yeah.
Republic Services, the municipalities that they do contract with, it's used about 1% or less. So this isn't currently used by us. We have our in-house system as opposed to Republic Services dropping it off and collecting it from their front door.
How often are people making, I think I'm getting to your point, how often are people coming and making appointments to drop off? I mean, how busy are you guys with that?
Yeah, so, the pandemic changed things, right? So we are a little bit smaller scale than we're used to, but we have 12 time slots on Wednesday and Friday mornings, and then more time slots than that on one Saturday a month. But historically, they're all filled up. I mean, there's some times where they're slower, but for the most part.
So I guess what I'm getting at, I'm sorry if I'm not hearing the answer that you're trying to give me here, but it's been a couple of years since I've done this, but we used to get a big black bag. We put all of our household hazardous waste in a big black bag, set it out front, and then it would go away. I want to be hearing that program no longer exists with Republic. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, that would be the add-on, which we're not currently utilizing.
Right. So it would go away unless we have that under the contract.
Oh, for Castle Hills.
That's right. Now, I'd
Okay.
be curious how often it's being used in Castle Hills.
Yeah, I can find that out.
Just as a cost comparison, the cost of our program is about 33 cents per month compared to $1.40.
Any other questions on these?
Yeah, I think utilization rate on both of those would be great for HHW and election. I'd love to see pre and post COVID numbers of our collection here on Legacy Lewisville side.
Well, I know from pre-COVID, we would handle in excess of 100 vehicles every Saturday. You know,
Yeah.
And see, and I didn't even know it was during the week. I thought it was only on
That's
Saturdays.
post-COVID.
That's post-COVID.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I guess I'm still post-COVID.
But
But that is 1% usage on both. Is that what you just said a little bit ago?
Well, the 1% is asking Republic Services of your other municipalities that take advantage of the door side. About 1% of residents were taking advantage.
And then about 1% utilizing our own take advantage of it.
I'd have to get the numbers on
Okay.
the side. That's what's something.
And that's what, 33 cents versus $1.44
Yeah.
for basically probably the same percentage of utilization.
Right, and really that 33 cents isn't gonna be saved by the resident because it's coming out of
it's
a
coming out of utility fund. Now, the other thing to consider is that you're not driving paint and chemicals in your vehicle over to the facility. It's coming in a protected vehicle. It's a specialty vehicle that they use and they go pick it up at your door.
I think the other thing that catches my mind about this is that I hate to think people are just dumping their hazardous stuff, 'cause they don't feel like going to the, make an effort to go out and schedule an appointment and stuff, so.
Well, this big bag, does it take care of like a 65-inch TV?
Right, yeah, we'd have to get the details on that, but currently, we do have several staff that vet what's coming in to make sure, hey, this could actually be recycled, this is solid waste. So we get our eyes on every load that comes in.
And what we typically use this for is I've got a quarter of a bottle of Roundup that's been out for 2 years, and I can't use it, I don't know if it's any more good. Bunch of paint from paint jobs that I've done, oil, I don't know if oil's or not.
Yeah, oil.
But all that stuff that, my fear is that without this, and it has to be advertised as well, because I suspect that would happen, we'd advertise this once a quarter, or once every 6 months, and we get a lot of participation, I believe. But if you don't advertise, people don't know about it, they don't know when it's gonna happen, they don't know about it. But I think it'd be well advertised, I think we could have an environmental impact potentially as well. So I like the $1.44 going on. I'm in support of that.
Just a couple of comments from me, and if there are no others, we can move on. But our 3 cubic yards is a pretty rich program regionally, so that's a nice benefit that we have. I expect it to be negotiated the next time the opportunity comes, because it's a lot of bulk that we currently do. If we're talking about sustainability, though, the yard green waste program, it's a special, again, it's its own vehicle that doesn't get contaminated and all that, but roughly 30% of your landfill mass is taken up by what a yard waste diversion program will do. So when we talk about extending the life of a landfill, it's a pretty significant needle mover when you talk about yard waste diversion programs. That's not inexpensive, though. I mean, that's a big chunk to people's trash bill. My concern on, I think of 1 and 3 kind of as competition, because you're paying the same, but one takes it all to the landfill, the other diverts them. And I also worry about unlimited, in the sense that you'll have people that flip houses and contractors, and they'll really abuse that, and it can be a real challenge. So those are my comments. Anything else on this slide before we move on?
Can I get some clarity on this? So does the rest of council have an interest in HHW at your door, or are you wanting to continue on? I think Patrick was interested in.
Yeah, I think if we go to Patrick's point, I think if we do collapse the contracts all under Republic, we need to be providing either additional education on how we do it, or we need to be providing an at your door type of option. And I'm sorry, I'm using the brand name because it's stuck in my head.
Yeah, you're saying at your option, but then we'd be adding on
To everybody.
to everybody's bill. So our bill's gonna go up.
Yeah, but we'd also get the newer
This is
door
true.
side pickup.
I will say one other thing too.
$16 a year or something like that.
One
Yeah.
other
Minimum.
thing to note is that the ultimate plan for expansion of our water plant will have to move our hazardous waste facility. Like,
Right.
we're gonna be utilizing that ultimately. So eventually, and I think we've always talked about this in our presentations in previous years, we're going to have to move that direction at some point before that expansion happens. But that's not today as a necessity, that's just a policy decision if y'all wanna do that.
I think let's carry that HHW conversation forward. That's what I'm hearing from Patrick. Bob, you all right with that? Not necessarily that we're gonna accept it, but let's get the numbers, the utilization rates, and let's have that conversation. that help, Claire?
That does make a difference to me. If 2% of my neighbors use it now, I may think about it differently. If 15% are using it, then it becomes a little more important in this transition, I think.
Yeah, these programs also, Patrick, they have a real spike when they start. And then everybody's cleaned out their 20 years of stuff that's been in their garage.
The rock hard paint.
Yeah,
Which doesn't need to be
Yeah.
recycled.
It's stronger than concrete.
all right.
That rock hard paint can go in the salt beds.
Yeah.
I put lots of cumulative paint, try to get rid of it.
So here's kind of a draft transition plan, whether option 2 or 3 is provided. So, we go through our social media outlets, website, get the word out to the residents, right, as soon as we can. Even this month, we would do that if that's the route we take. We would also have to, of course, notify CWD if option 2 or 3 is chosen. Utility bill inserts would be one of 4 months prior to. The Public Services would send out their mailer 30 days in advance as well. And then, as you mentioned, the Public Services would deliver their new bins essentially the same week, same day as CWD would collect theirs and take theirs away. And then there would be a learning curve, a transition period for any change in the city. So we have to communicate directly with the Public Services and the residents throughout the city.
So with that, before we go on to the next slide, which is about what we do with commercial, is there a preference on 2 or 3 or 1? I think I'm hearing you wanna go to 3, at least consider 3 and get maybe some more information. I'm not sure if you needed to come back for another workshop beforehand. There were some questions you wanted follow-up information on, so do you want that sent to you separately, or do you wanna have this come back to you as a workshop?
I can have it sent to me separately, or sent to council separately. I'm hearing 3 as well, as far as consensus.
3 makes sense to me.
Okay.
I don't see,
Well,
I don't see the point of a hybrid.
Yeah, so I have a question about that. I know we have a current contract with Republic, but I would assume that if we're gonna go with the less efficient option, at some point, our rate is going to reflect that, right?
I'll let the team answer that.
Well, in the Republic contract, the rate increases is actually capped, which is no more than 5% per year. And that would carry forward even when we renew it in 2030. So I don't think that's
Or if we renew it in 2030, you mean?
correct, if we renew it. But I don't think that's a huge concern as far as it blowing up, because we didn't have as much. In fact, when we had a conversation with them about the 2 options, they said they didn't really have a preference between the 2.
Oh, okay.
Thankfully, we're close to a landfill, so those costs flatten out a little bit. I do have a follow-up question I'd love to get the answer to, is the difference in technology between the 2 different vendors. What do they have in the trucks? Cameras, tracking, all of that, all the goodies that they use or don't use. So.
So to touch base on commercial services, go over some language that are in both contracts, just for clarity purposes. An exclusive franchise that gives exclusive right to that vendor. No other vendors would have the opportunity for services. The rates are set by the contract, and there is a franchise fee involved that passes through to the city. Non-exclusive franchise, essentially the city would approve what vendors, but it does open up to multiple vendors. And so the rates are not set by the contract at that point. A little bit, somewhat of a market at that point, but the franchise fee is incorporated. And then open market is, as the definition says, it's an open market. Any company out there has the ability to operate without those franchise fees. So solid waste, Legacy Lewisville versus Castle Hills area is exclusive versus in the Castle Hills area, TWD, it's non-exclusive. Commercial recycling are both open market. Multifamily, we have an exclusive franchise in Legacy Lewisville as opposed to open market in Castle Hills area. Those are the franchise fees, a little bit different, 17.46 versus 10%. And then this number, we did a survey. I would say it's overwhelmingly Republic Services to this day as far as commercial in the Castle Hills area. we got with Republic Services, we asked, hey, where your rates are today versus is option 2 or 3 comes into play. Their customers, even though they would still be Republic Services, would see an average of 32% decrease in their monthly rates based off what our contract says now versus not operating under our contract, so.
So our intent with commercial is to try to bring everyone into the exclusive franchise. So we're gonna work with legal on what that looks like. Our contract with Republic anticipated, and our ordinance that established our franchise fee anticipated annexation. And that the city manager has the authority to be able to extend that exclusive franchise, but I think we would go ahead and bring something back to council just to make sure we're doing full notice to the public and all that type of stuff, so we'll, I'll work with legal, but wanted to let you guys know that's the intent as well.
Any questions on this one, council?
And that's it, so if you guys have any other questions overall?
The one thing I really do appreciate about a unified commercial is it is much easier for the city to track down a vendor that's not complying. There's a little bit of a Wild West mentality when you get multiple vendors out there picking up stuff at dark 30 in the morning, banging around. On the commercial side, it can be really challenging. So I'm all in on that side.
Okay.
Other questions? Mr. Hunt, thank you so much. Appreciate the detail. All right, we're gonna move on to workshop item C, 1951 Summit Development Update. We have Chris Zilke.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
First time, that's.
I do what I can. And Mark Kelcher,
Yes, sir.
here to present.
The mayor and council, before we get started, I just wanted to, this is a little bit of an unusual thing for us to bring a developer in and to really kind of give this presentation to you guys, but I know this project is important to you. But also, moving forward with this development, wanted you guys to be able to see who the operators are, see what their vision is, and then be able to ask questions directly to them, so.
I'm Christopher and Mark. I'm with Centurion American Development Group. I work on the hospitality side, so help Murdad and the rest of the group with the hotels, restaurants, and that kind of stuff. This property, when we bought it, was initially, we had announced it potentially to be a gas monkey. And we've been talking to Richard Rollins to do that, and that was our plan initially. We also are doing the 47-acre development behind 1951. Murdad made a decision to change away from the Gas Monkey brand recently, partly or mostly because he was a little concerned with it being a little too noisy, rowdy for the residential development in the back, a little too biker and heavy metal music, and we really wanted to get something that was more community-oriented, family-friendly, and also because Richard wasn't an operator, it was really a brand we were buying into, and he wanted to get a very strong operator that had a lot of experience in the hospitality industry to really be here for a long time and provide a great service to the community that we're building there. And so we brought in Mark and Dirk Kelcher, who have been in this business a long time and have, I think, 14 current restaurants. They also do a lot of event centers, live music venues that they service. And so we wanted to kind of show their vision, introduce what we're working on. I'll let Mark take it away.
Well, I mean, have you guys read through this at all or seen this? So, I mean, the concept, I mean, is someplace that people can go and, I mean, there's the pickleball facility, which we're also building one in Farmers Branch, so this won't be just our one pickleball, we'll have two. So I just wanted to allay the comments from, that we're not just building this to bring it up, but we are building pickleball other places and looking for future locations.
And we can scroll through this a bit. So it's largely the same as what we had before. We added a pickleball component. We still have the putt-putt golf. We still have the go-kart tracks, zip lines, live music, And we can keep scrolling here. This is kind of just really some images of what the brand is and who they are. So these are
The facility
their,
going out in Frisco, is this also under the same brand of Jack's?
say that again?
The facility going out in Frisco, is this also under the name of Jack's Backyard? It's not-
No.
This will be a one and only. And the reason we're naming it Jack's is our very first place back in '94 was Jack's Pub over by SMU. And we named it after our dad. Really, at that point, we were, young, with the potential that we may need to borrow money from him. We wouldn't let it go bankrupt if we named it after him. And this is kind of, that was kind of our theory. We ended up buying that land and then we sold it to SMU in '06. So it didn't just close, we sold it.
So they currently have Doe Brothers, they're about to open their 4th location, Bourbon Street, got a couple location Biggs in Bedford. They have Delta Charlie's, which is at the Grand Prairie Airport. You can have dinner and take a plane ride around, it's pretty interesting. Rock Springs Cafe, which is in the Fort Worth Botanic Garden. Black Agave is a new Tex-Mex brand they're doing. Ron's Place, a cocktail bar. And then Barrel and Bones, which is a barbecue venue. And these are other those are other concepts they have started, sold, created for other people, help manage.
And we run concessions for like football stadiums, Curtis Caldwell Center, Crowley, Arlington, Irving, Carrollton. So and then Curtis Caldwell is a large event center in Garland, so we run all the concessions and catering in the arena. So concerts up to 8,500 people, and then obviously all the sporting events that are there as well,
So the idea is we're gonna bring some of the food from the concepts that they have there so that there will be a variety. Have some of the barbecue, some of the pizza, probably some Tex-Mex, and really have a good variety. Obviously some stable classics, but then be able to bring in, depending on what type of music is being played or what events are being had at the facility, be able to have kind of a rotating menu of available food.
And we brought on a operations manager that was with Dave & Buster's and Main Event for the last 9 years. So we hired him to kind of coordinate running the attractions, as well as we have the food and beverage background, and then we're hiring, he doesn't start till the first of the year, a entertainment director that has been in the booking and entertainment business for 30 plus years, booking all over. So he'll be directing the live entertainment portion of it. Our goal there is to have local acts Friday nights, Thursday, Friday, and then more regional on Saturday that we do charge a cover charge for, and then once a month have even a larger national touring act. And that we'll try for Saturdays, but that may end up being, depending on their tours, that could be any day of the week. If it's the right act, we'll get them booked.
The acts will be inside or outside?
They're outside. The stage is back here. And if you're worried about sound, that has been sound studied and worked, because we always had a stage in here. So we did sound studies and we went through all of that from the beginning, and we have a certain decibel level we have to keep to. It was considered the first time it was brought up, and we put a lot of energy and effort into making sure it does. Obviously, the development behind it is Centurion American, so we are obviously making sure that we are not going to run out our homeowners in the back.
And what was I know we had the number at one point, the size of the venue as far as how many people could attend the concerts?
About 1,000.
About 1,000, okay.
Yeah.
Can you orient me for the stages? You said by
Sure, let's see, so here's the stage, this is the building now. Here's 35, this is where the go-kart track, and it's gonna be here.
The sound's all projected out towards 35.
Out towards 35. Yeah, initially, there was talk of putting it way back on that field, and we decided that was too close to the residences. So we also brought it here to try to kind of centralize where the action is, so that you can, drive a go-kart, do zip line, watch a band, kind of make it very interactive.
where are you gonna park all of these concert goer cars at?
So we have a fairly big parking lot there.
You dropped the ball,
We have
the parking queen.
We have a fairly large parking lot there, but we also have an agreement that if we have anything over 500 people, I believe that's the number off the top of my head, we will bus them
From?
to another lot that we have an agreement with. I don't have it in front of me, but it is in our paperwork that we will have to bus them.
You got that? Thank you.
So pickleball was one of the things Mark has been part of ABAR-N and T-Bar-N and been involved in pickleball quite heavily, where that we really wanted this something that could bring a little more daytime traffic and is obviously very popular, fastest growing sport. He's been working on a concept and we felt that it would be a good addition to kind of diversify what's going on there. This would go where the batting cage currently is, if you know the site. So it's kind of on the other side of the building.
Do y'all entertain the glow pickleball for evenings?
That would be a him question.
So, I mean, that's a
That's
novelty.
a yes or no?
Well, I mean, it's a novelty thing. I mean, we'll probably do a tournament once or twice a year to do that, but that's not something that the real players play very often.
He's a serious player.
Oh, you just said that real players play very often? Did you really just say that? That's what I thought,
I didn't
okay.
insinuate.
I'm gonna get you a t-shirt that says real player.
But if you want to talk about the programming about this, I think we've got a page on that somewhere about the programming, talking to.
Running clinics, having lessons, tournaments, everything. And then trying, like, some of the schools where I live have started pickleball clubs. It's not a sport yet for the schools, but I don't know if it will contact the schools, if they need courts. Anything that we can do to bring in community involvement, we're absolutely all for. So, that'll just be a learning curve. We'll reach out to everyone and see if there's anyone that needs or can use the courts.
Somebody who wants to be a real player.
For the real and not so real.
There you go.
We'll have to make a t-shirt.
It's an institution though, isn't it?
Yeah. Zip lining. We had talked about having a big kind of amusement ride early on at one point. We did a third-party market study that we do have in here. We have a company out of California that specializes in amusement rides, and we kind of got a feel for what's cost-effective, safe. There was an accident in Houston that I think everybody remembers with a big amusement ride, and we don't want that kind of stuff. So everybody felt the zip lines were the safest option. Still a really cool experience. We want to do, light up vests and make it a fun attraction that people can see, but not very risky as the amusement rides were. What else? What do we think? The putt-putt golf. Putt-putt golf has surprisingly become very popular. Tiger Woods is doing indoor putt-putt. And so our thought on this outdoor is to make all of the holes have Dallas area attractions, Reunion Tower, the Lewisville water tower, big large marge, Cowboys Stadium, that kind of stuff, and have that all be kind of part of the fun of playing putt-putt golf out there.
You got the high five going on out there? Why do you need Dallas? We have enough of our own attractions here. We have,
we're still.
Amaretto Way and all of that. We can even ice it.
You can ice it.
I'm telling you. We got the Pines
You
Motel.
got a hole in one and you tell me, we'll do it.
Hey,
Stop where you is.
we got it all right here. We have our own bridge that goes over the
There
lake
you go.
too.
We can do it.
So we don't need Dallas. We're not
We're
Dallas.
open to it. These are some of you want to talk about some of the festivals you've.
Yeah, they're pretty, we do a lot of festivals every year, the catering concessions so these are just some of them that we have done. We do all Red Bulls events, and sometimes, those have hit 100,000 people at their events, so hopefully they'll start doing them again, though. They haven't But, so I mean, that's just showing that we have the experience for 30 years. We've done, I mean, Deep Ellum Arts Festival, we did from day one till it ended last year. It's final. But that had 200,000+ people every year over the weekend. So-
And not that we're trying to get 200,000, but for us, it was important to
I
get
was
an
gonna ask you where
operator
the
that.
parking was gonna be.
No, that's not our goal here. We
We're
just,
gonna bus in 199,500.
Yeah.
it's more about for us
That,
having,
you can park them in Dallas
yeah.
and just bus them in.
yeah, it was more about having a partner that actually knows how to operate the facility and make it work and be able to do large-scale food and beverage.
Awesome.
Food options, we talked about that, and I think that's pretty much the gist of it.
I will have to say that I'm excited to see, for those of y'all that haven't, that didn't grow up here many decades ago, like some institutions have. We used to have a putt-putt golf here. And it was down Lake Park Road across
That's,
from, just east of the baseball fields, across from the golf course. And it was busy in the early 70s all the time.
it is having a moment right now.
Yes.
It is having a
And then it just
comeback.
went away.
It is surprising. We took this site, we bought it, 2.5 years ago or so. And I told Murdad, there's a thing for putt-putt. Everybody thought I was
No,
crazy.
there is, it's coming
And then
back.
Tiger Woods started
We
popping
all
up
missed it.
as putt-putt.
I have a couple of quick questions.
Yep.
Going back to parking again, what can be done to dissuade people from parking on resident streets behind, fences or something that people can't?
Sure, honestly, I'm not in the operations of that, but I know that they've discussed it. I can certainly follow up with that.
Richard, did you wanna add anything about parking on the site?
Of course, that's something we'll look at as part of the engineering site plan in more detail. So as more details come along, we'll look at our standards, and if there's any alternative standards, they may come back before the council.
Then the other question I have is, we've had now 2 summers of 105+ for 60 days, no rain. What can be done to keep people outdoors playing pickleball and other parts of play?
If you go back to the pickleball pictures, you see that a big part of them are shaded. So we are shading and covering, not indoor, but they are shaded. And we have we spent quite a bit of time, actually, Mark and I, going to some of the venues that are very successful outdoors, like Katy Trail, Ice House in Uptown in Plano. We have a big extensive misting package that will help cool it.
That's right.
Yeah, we've obviously,
Shade structures.
and then a lot of shade structures. We're going to
You
have
got
a lot of
benches for those
sales.
not so real?
That's right.
We need chairs.
We're gonna make one for you that says,
Rocker.
not so real, there you go.
Not so
But no, we
real.
did, obviously, because so much of this venue is outdoors, we've put a lot of consideration into just how we're gonna shade it. There fortunately is a lot of foliage and trees, and we've made sure not to affect any of that. And definitely will add more, so that it can be shaded, but we will have a lot of shade kind of structures on the site.
And heaters also, so we're putting in misters and heaters to make it as useful year-round as possible.
Other questions, council?
First of all, I'm glad you guys came. I think it provides a lot of context. I'm probably the one who was not that happy with this presentation the first time and not seeing but provides a lot of context. I wasn't really that thrilled about the name either, but hearing that was your dad's name, that's provides a lot more context as well. Glad to see you guys were part of places like the Gypsy Tea Room, trees, even Top Rail. The Dave & Buster's thing was great too, because I think the previous place here, I think if it was just gonna be putt-putt and the go-kart, I don't think it's gonna work.
Yeah.
Definitely not gonna work, so I'm glad to see that. Glad you guys have been involved in the Deep Ellum Arts Festival thing, even though, like I say, it did close down, but I think having that as a background is gonna be a great thing. Your music act list, looks like that's, definitely what needs to be here, although the mayor probably won't like it, but, so it's definitely more excited now. As you can see, you guys have got a passion for this. I think this is gonna be great for this location.
Thank you.
I have a question about the pickleball courts, because that looks like an awful lot of pickleball courts?
He
10.
is stepping in. You got your boots.
That's only 10?
Yeah,
That's more.
I mean, this is a rendering, but what we have is 10.
Okay, but the rendering, that is more than 10, right? I mean,
It's 12, I think.
12,
Okay.
maybe 11, 10 in the corner.
I assume that there is some method to the madness on what you're proposing as far as the number of courts.
Well, I mean, everywhere, look at Brookhaven, just as an example, now granted the Nationals are there, but I mean, they started with 4 courts, went to 8, went to 10, went to 16, now have 30. And they just keep adding more because the demand is there. So I mean, the demand is there for, and especially open to the public. I mean, I'm just using that as an example because that's where I play, but,
Real players.
real players there.
Real player.
But, I mean, the demand is, and, you know, this takes the space of the softball or the batting cages. I mean, I think it's a good start. I mean, if the demand is there, I mean, it may be that we want to add more, but parking we would have an issue with. So I think 10's a good number. I mean, Chicken and Pickle and Grapevine they have 12, the other one only has 8. And they're packed all the time. So I think the demand is definitely there.
Okay, and there will be furniture out there, right? I mean,
Yes.
people will be like eating.
There'll be places for non-real players to sit down, have food, and we're not gonna.
Rocking chairs.
So at each one, we're gonna have a small pavilion with tables, chairs, TV. And so that, one, you can rent them out for parties, for whatnot, for people that want to, corporate events, any type of event, but also that, if you're in between games, you have because the F&B part, the food and beverage part is so important to the pickleball, to those courts as well, that we want to have a place for people to eat and drink. And the same guest may come and play pickleball one night and then come another night to, partake in the other activities and, so we want to really appeal to that person for multiple, date nights or whatever activities to come out.
The only other comment that I had was about the zip line. I can't really tell how long that is, but is it just gonna be one line?
One line.
I don't know
One
if
line
it
or
would be,
two?
it's possible to have 2 side by side, because that line is gonna get real long
Yeah,
with just
I would
one.
think you would need 2.
I think there'll be 2.
Well, he's still doing the engineering on that. So
Okay.
it's hard because you've got to get a straight line without a building in the way. So finding a straight line that works.
Yeah, I got it. I'm sure y'all can figure that out.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments?
I do have a comment. I think the name is very appropriate because there was an institution a long time ago and was here for years at and I'm giving somebody a hard time here about the word institution. At the southeast corner of 35 and 407, and it was Big Jack's. I grew up with Big Jack's. Big Jack's isn't here anymore,
There you go.
so it's a Little Jack's.
There you go. Is that it? I feel like I have to defend my musical taste for just one moment. Bring me 90s rock, I'll be happy. That's all I need.
He's got the Toadies are on there.
Oh, sweet.
He was hanging out with the Toadies.
I didn't say that. Okay, give me some Toadies, give me some Jimmy Eat World, we'll be in high heaven, high cotton.
Give me some Led Zeppelin.
So I did
Might be a
wanna,
little bit more difficult.
We'll have to make
Later.
some adjustments for parking
Yeah.
for sure, if we get Paige Plant down there.
so I did wanna make sure council understood, so right now, they have all the rights to move forward with phase 1, which is everything but the pickleball courts. So they are moving forward with, I think, interior demo of the buildings, and so they're moving forward. The second phase for pickleball and all the things you were just bringing up about pickleball, we need to refine that. That comes in, I think, an amendment to the PD, so we'd be working on that. And then also, we would need to bring the economic development agreement to make sure that it's a different user on this as well, and all those just updates on them. So
I think, guys, you've really addressed, I think the biggest concern we had was that we wanted a partner that was going to create a sense of community and a sense of, music and and having those kinds of events that we don't really have in the city at this point. So I think that really solves for that, and we just needed some comfort that you guys could bring that to the table. So outstanding, appreciate it.
Thank you, absolutely.
You know, pickleball and trash has been the hottest topics to us this year, and we got it in one night.
Right.
About both of them.
Next up, item D, discussion of Grand Theater home design. We have Denise Helbing, our Art Center manager, and Alex Hargis with Theater DNA.
Thank you. Mayor, Council, City Manager, we're here to share an update with you that you asked for at retreat this past spring. We have done another assessment about the home refresh option in lieu of expansion of the Lewisville Grand Theater. So I will turn it over to Alex with Theater DNA now, and I will be here, of course, to answer any staff kind of questions at the end.
Perfect, thanks Denise. Thank you, Mayor, thank you, Council, everyone else here. I know we've got just a little bit of time here, so we'll try to be real expeditious to get through this, to give you all plenty of time to ask as many questions as you want. So we're here to go over the summary and the findings of the renovation assessment that we did for the Grand Theater complex. So this story actually starts back, if you remember, in '22. We were part of a feasibility study team that was brought in to assess the long-term goals and needs for this facility, whether it meant renovations or whether it meant adding on to the facilities in large and big. And with that, of course, we were on site with the architect and the market study consultant to see what the utilization was. That was then compared to the market analysis to see what the market could bear as far as live entertainment for y'all. And then there was some concepting design that was there, and there was a couple different options, which were these three. Home was, hey, we don't have a lot of money for a big capital project for this particular sector, so let's just refresh what we've got, extend the life of it, extend capabilities. That was home. Then there was Portico, which was to put in kind of a Kessler Theater type insert into the courtyard space, and then there was the Big Daddy over here. The summary of all of that is once we started crunching the numbers through the cost analysis, it just wasn't the right time, it wasn't the right funding and climate to do something big. So what we did is we came back at the request of y'all to focus on home. And so going to the next slide, the goals of the renovation study were to figure out what spaces, what equipment was starting to fail that needed to be replaced before it reached a critical point of no return. Other areas were to address safety if there were safety concerns. Another goal was to expand services and offerings for your community in terms of local art groups, as well as private rentals, the community at large. And then also, how can we increase revenue for this facility by maybe tweaking spaces for different purposes, adding seats in different performance spaces. So we evaluated all of the areas of the facility that you see here. And what we're going to do is just go quickly into each major block and discuss what we found. And then what was that identified to be able to fix. So as we go through here, you'll see that it's divided into three priorities. A priority 1, a priority 2, and a priority 3. And this is all knowing that there's only certain funds that are available or can be available in the future. And we couldn't just put everything into just one wish list. And so we wanted to address key items right off the bat that would have the highest impact for internal function and external visibility to the public. So starting outside. So the courtyard itself, as we understand it, is already getting some refresh through the Parks and Recs department with some of the landscaping upgrades that are there. That could also include some additional lighting. In priority 1, one of the biggest things to address was additional storage. Because in the facility, there is a decent amount of storage, but there is a deficit. And so the idea was that on the exterior of the building where the loading dock is, going towards 35, that in that parking lot, you could take offline 3 or 4 parking spaces in the back, not for the public, but in the back, to then put in a fully bricked or precast concrete 12 by 20 structure. And then going along the same line to priority 3, and you can see this is very low in priority, it's considering replacing the window tinting on the glasses. This is kind of a double-edged sword because of course it can help not tax the HVAC system with the radiant heating coming in. But one of the big things that came out of the study, and it's still prevalent, is there's lack of visibility, transparency into the building. It's already set back way up and kind of up and into the hill from the street. And when it's all blacked out like that, you can't see the activity inside. And so there is this disconnect between the public. But again, priority 3. And then let me just point out, you'll see over here on the lower left-hand corner of the slides, that's where we break out the cost estimates, construction cost estimates per priority. Okay, move to the next one. So for the lobby, priority 1, what we were focusing on was the user experience, revamping the wayfinding elements there, getting some small digital displays, room scheduling, just so that way when there's multiple users in the building, they can easily get their way to a performance, or there's going to be a reading over here, or a community workshop, or an art class. But then also addressing the different entry points into the facility, because how many of y'all have been? I'm assuming all of y'all. You'll notice there's lots of different entry points, right? You can come off of Main, you can come off of Church. And so being able to orient yourself where you're coming into which facility you need to go to is a big factor in the user experience. Prior to 2, we'll be focusing on that food and beverage program. We just heard about how important it is for pickleball. It's just as important inside here for live performances. In fact, all the clients that we're working with here, what we tell them is the food and beverage program, it's become a necessity, just as you would say you need air conditioning inside of your facility, because it is a standard. Your customers now, when they think of entertainment, they think of what's on the stage, and they also think about the food and beverage. So a potential grab-and-go station, so that way it reduces the crush on the line at the main concession bar with self-checkout stations, as well as optimizing the appearance of the current concession stand that's there to make it more visible and pop out. Last on priority 3 would be to turn that large wall when you first walk into the lobby into more of a dynamic space. And if you had your video monitors that were there, they could be dual purpose to be used as digital art, advertising, more signage, and promoting events that are going throughout the city. So moving on.
I have a suggestion. Can we put on there, did you park backwards? I see it almost daily. I just like to see people try to maneuver their way in there the wrong way, and I'm like, it's interesting to watch, actually. And I know we used to have signs on the doors that said something about it, but do we still have, okay, but they're not getting it.
Well, now you can go in and get you some candy and popcorn, go out there and watch them. Grab and go.
It's very entertaining.
It is.
Yeah, it is hard, right? Because on paper, when you look at the engineering, it's way more efficient to park it that way, but it's that communicating the ideas. It is difficult.
It goes against the grain of what they're used to.
So then, as we start to move further into the facility, here we go into Huff Hines Performance Hall. The main areas that we wanted to address and tackle were a lot of the theatrical performance systems. Big one right off the bat is the performance lighting. Because right now what you have is an incandescent lighting system, right? You know, the ones old school that we all grew up with. Now that is all phasing over to LED like everything else. And that's critical because one, right, it's being deregulated or regulated to where it's not going to be legal at some point and phased out. But even from a material demand standpoint, there's only 2 factories in China that we're aware of that spin incandescent filaments for theatrical fixtures anymore. And they're quickly going away because the demand isn't there. So that is definitely a priority critical one, is to do that LED light conversion, as well as some other things like adding AV fiber capabilities inside the hall, replacing the control booth for some sound isolation, and replacing the house lights. Because if you've ever been in there for a show, they dim, but not cleanly. They dim and then they do this weird flicker and come off. And it's because it's the wrong kind of fixtures, not the LED units. We recommend changing those. Priority 2, because that is a heavy lift, the LED light conversion, the goal is to continue that in priority 2 with finish replacing the units with LEDs. In priority 1, we have a hybrid of replace some straight out and then do some retrofits on the others, where you can take your incandescent body and then put an LED cap on the back. So that way we're not trying to spend all that money all at once. And then priority 3, if you've ever been on the stage, Huffines has an automated rigging system. It's not the manual where you pull a rope and the counterweight raises the bar up and down. It's mechanized. And it's hard to service those units because they're just vertical up on the wall. So you either have to get a scissor lift over there, which is hard when you have all the other technical elements in the way. So if you were to add a mid-gallery, basically a working platform, it would help with efficiency, and there would be some safety increases there too. And going on to the black box. The biggest thing, the opportunity we saw for the black box was that you can really increase the volume in that space. Right now it goes gangbusters for the stand-up comedy that's in there, in there, and some of the local groups. But it's hard to configure it because it's all manual platforms. And so you have to do a call to strike the platforms, strike the chairs, and set up in a different configuration, which is why most local art groups don't ever change it, because it costs them a lot of money because we build those back to the art groups. If we were to replace those platforms with telescopic seating, so seats that, like, imagine a bleacher system, but with higher finishes, where it could collapse and store against the wall, and then also come out. If we put a telescopic system in there, now, one night, you could do a theater presentation with standard seating. The next night, you could do a flat floor for a gala. So that way you can hold an awards presentation at Huffines, and instead of them going down the street to a banquet hall, they can now just go into your same facility and set up 60-inch round tables. And so you're capturing some of that food and beverage revenue inside the space. Prior to, along with 1 is the same thing as Huffines. It's doing that LED lighting conversion because you can't really do one space without the other. And then priority 3 is just a really simple thing, but it makes a psychological impact of just changing the color from a black dark room into something with a little bit of hue of color. Again, very low cost fix there. Okay, so then going into the recital hall. The biggest thing we tried to address here was, again, that storage problem. When we did the feasibility study and we saw the usage on that recital hall, it was used mostly for overflow dressing rooms for like the Nutcracker and the ballet, and a lot of meetings. It wasn't used for a lot of special events, receptions and dinners and things like that. So what we saw is 2 opportunities. 1, extending the wall, pushing that wall up a little bit further to create this partition wall and sound and light lock. So that way you can use this section for more storage and then also reduce the sound bleed, because there's a lot of sound issues in that space. The seals on the door are failing. You don't have anything blocking all the noise of all those actors back here to anything in this room, so you hear everything that happens back there. So that is what we recommend in priority 1. Priority 2 are some AV upgrades, some cosmetics. And then priority 3 is kind of punching up that AV lighting, audio and video package, so the room can be used more often for special events. And then going to the art gallery, there's not a lot that needs to be done there. It's a beautiful gallery, beautiful natural light, lots of great movable walls, but we need some electrical outlets in there, because right now there are none. So if you wanted to do a small little jazz band or plug in a microphone for a reading, you have to snake a cable all the way out into the hallway, and it looks pretty unsightly. And if you want to do any digital projection in the room, you can't, because you don't have any outlets in the ceiling. So we recommend fixing that, and potentially in priority 3, hanging some rigging pipes. All right, and then going to the classrooms and the dressing rooms. This is where you see a lot of the biggest visual transformation. So we see a lot of potential by taking that first bank of classrooms and essentially gutting it. You take out that partition wall, you take out that storage room up front, which we are not adding in those other spaces that we've talked about, and turning into a VIP kind of donor lounge experience. With that, you can sell that at a premium for private rentals. It could be an add-on experience for ticketed shows. And then, of course, it can also double up as a conference room, which local community groups could use. We keep the other classroom exactly the same, just do some AV upgrades in there. But really, it's all about how do we maximize that space inside and outside with an outdoor patio to bring more life and vitality to that building at night. Other priority one is the dressing rooms. You know, they're 11 years old, they're holding up okay, but some finishes need to be replaced. Need to add some video monitors so performers can actually see what's going on stage and update power and data. And then priority two would be taking that last classroom and retrofitting that into a staff break room. So those are all the different areas that we covered and made recommendations on what to change. As far as the cost, you've been seeing the construction costs in that lower corner. Additional anticipated construction costs include contingencies, insurance, architectural design fees, escalation, permitting, and general contractor. And so then when we bring it all together, these are how the numbers shake out. And it includes the construction costs, which you see on the first line, and then anticipated soft costs. And that, the kind of construction add-on costs and soft costs come up to about 30% of what the actual materials and time for the construction. So priority one, if we were to kind of summarize that for y'all, be adding an exterior storage building, a new wayfinding and signage system, creating a new welcome desk in the lobby so that way the staff can see who's there and properly greet people. It has a security impact as well. Converting the black box into telescopic seating, taking the recital hall and adding a partition wall and storage, converting that first classroom into a VIP storage lounge, and then an LED lighting system conversion for all the performance spaces. And then in priorities 2 and 3, they shake out with carrying over the LED lighting, doing some more fix-ups in the black box, attacking the food and beverage program. And then in priority 3, it's more of the nice to haves once you get over to that column.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah.
So, wanted to see if you had any feedback for it. Right now, in this current year's budget, you guys have put aside money for the design of the priority one items. And so that's already been baked in to get completed this year, so moving forward with those. But just wanted to get feedback if there's anything you guys had concerns about, thoughts, questions.
Are there efficiencies, money efficiencies to doing priority 2 and priority 1 at the same time? Like if we push priority 2 off, we're gonna incur a 40% penalty because it would have been more efficient to do them at the same time?
That's a good question. I'd say the only efficiency you would get would be on the equipment cost of the LED lighting carrying over, right? Because as we go another 2 years, 3 years, whatever that may be, equipment costs will only continue to rise. And so with the way that we've tried to spread the money out efficiently in priority 1, you're not doing the full lighting conversion. So no, you wouldn't be dinged on construction costs because we're not doing a lot of that in the other priorities, as opposed to the lighting equipment.
Other comments? Questions?
Everyone's ready for the big show coming up?
Black box modification, I think, is amazing. Really would make a significant difference to that space, which is a great space. I love the ideas of upgrading the gallery, because you're right, you can't do digital art without running cables and whatnot in there, and that's, you know, I'm starting to see more and more of that. I've seen a couple of different sculptures in there where they brought in their battery pack and they're running it off a battery, and it's probably not the way the artist intended, but boy, it was creative. So I really enjoyed that. The VIP lounge, interesting. I don't know if it's reducing our load. I love those classrooms. I love that they open to the outside. I love that we can create them. So I'm like, what do I lose? But if
Yeah,
you think that's an
the one-
important space,
The one comment I would make on there is none of the furniture would be fixed, right? So you would be losing the storage section of that cinder block section. But that whole front, instead of becoming now drywall, where again, you don't see anything, that all becomes glass. But yeah, the conference table, the chairs, we're not imagining some beefy thing like this. It'd be something that'd be modular. They could be broken down so you could clear the room, still use it for classrooms if you wanted to.
And I think it would elevate our availability of smaller conference room spaces. We use the classrooms in that way, they're certainly not elevated, they're very a wet classroom experience, and this would give us a nicer experience, and then we still have that wet classroom for art making.
One of the other thoughts was, once you kind of create that VIP, that elevated space, it now becomes another sponsorable asset that you have. Because you got Huffines Hall, the black box still could be named, but that's another naming opportunity once it kind of gets that polish on it.
and we're not doing anything to lessen the quality of the Claude King Memorial Disco Ball that we have in there, right?
No, it stays, it has to stay. That was one of the first things we saw when we came, we were like, dang, there is a disco ball in here. We're like,
Right.
It's gotta stay.
No, I think as far as a 10-year refresh, it makes a lot of sense. Definitely the automation and the lighting and moving that to LED would reduce our costs, because I know we spend a lot on electricity in that space. So I don't have concerns other than figuring out where we scrape together $1.5 to $3 million, depending on how far we go.
We have some options and we'll bring that back to you next fiscal year once the
So
design's done.
is this just picking one of these priorities, or can you intermingle other priorities, 1, 2, and 3, kind of?
If you guys have something that you're like, I want to have in priority 1, you just let us know. And this would be a good time if you have something.
No, I'm just saying like some of these that are small, they're really small, could just be, worked in. If you're working on the 3 classrooms anyway, why not just do the whole thing, get that part done? Because you are gonna lose some efficiencies, come back, have somebody come back that one area, so.
We'll look at that and see if there's a way, just from an efficiency standpoint, if we
Once you get a contractor in there and they're working, it's not that much more money just to have them do a space right next door. To have them come back and reload everything, set up again and do that, and pay twice as much.
I hear you.
Sounds like council's on board in principle for 1 through 3. Just need to discuss numbers.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, folks, appreciate it.
All right, council, we've got about 2 more minutes before we have to get into the other room. So workshop is adjourned and we will move into regular session. Good evening. It is 7:02 p.m. and we are calling this regular session of the Lewisville City Council to order. We do have a quorum. If you would please rise and join me in a moment of contemplation. Amen. Councilmember Green?
Please join me for the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Chief Deaver?
I'm excited about this one.
And tonight we have a rare honor for me to be able to do this, and I know for our police department, it's always amazing when we have the opportunity to honor a resident for this type of activity. Is Mr. Chris Honey here? Mr. Honey, would you mind joining me and the chief down here, please, sir? Thank you so much for doing this. Appreciate you. So the Lewisville Police Department is providing this certificate of appreciation to Mr. Chris Honey. On July 27th, 2023, a police pursuit of a stolen vehicle resulted in the vehicle crashing into 2 stopped vehicles. After the crash, the suspect fled on foot toward a shopping center. The officer continued to pursue in his patrol car, but the subject changed directions. Chris Honey was at a convenience store by the gas pumps and witnessed the pursuit, crash, and suspect fleeing on foot. Honey decided to take action and began pursuing him. The suspect yelled at him, "I have a gun," and Honey disregarded his own safety and caught the suspect, bringing him to the ground. Honey began wrestling with the suspect and was able to keep control until the officer could get him and place the suspect in handcuffs. Thank you for your selfless act of bravery in assisting the Lewisville Police Department in the capture of a fleeing felon. This is presented on September 18th, 2023, and is, of course, signed by Kevin Deaver, our Chief of Police. Let's give Mr. Honey a large round of applause.
Chris, I just want to thank you for getting involved. Too often these days, people want to take out their phones and record things and not actually get involved. You stepped up and got involved, and we appreciate that. And the guy did have a gun. So it went flying out during the arrest. So very dangerous situation that you helped out with, and we appreciate it very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you, sir. Thank you, sir. You know, I talk a lot about how you make a community, and how Lewisville isn't just 10 stops on I-35, but that's the example of how you make community, is being involved, and when somebody needs help, you give them help, whoever they are. So, Mr. Honey, thank you for setting that example. All right. We are going to go ahead and move into item D. Actually, no, we're going to go ahead and move into our legal. Where am I? All the way at the end. We're going to go ahead and go into closed session in accordance with Texas Government Code Subchapter D, Section 551.071, consultation with the attorney, legal issues related to the Fair Housing Act, 42 U.S.C. Section 3601, et sec. And I think that's the only one we need, Liz? Okay. We will return shortly. All right, we're going to come back into regular session. Item D, public hearing. Item 1, public hearing, consideration of an ordinance granting a special use permit for commercial amusement outdoor on approximately 3.175 acres out of the S.M. Hayden Survey, abstract number 537, zoned light industrial district located on the east side of Barfneck Lane, approximately 1,540 feet south of Midway Road, as requested by Ronald Weigel and Endurance Development on behalf of Pathfinder Sports LLC, the property owner, case number 23-02-3-SUP. The applicant requests a special use permit for a 19,200 square foot cricket sport facility with an outdoor practice field. Increased landscaping and enhanced building materials are provided with this request. The proposed outdoor practice field has been situated as far as possible from an existing single-family home west of the site to mitigate sound and light impacts. Hours of operation from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week. Staff finds the request consistent with the big move of economic vitality for the Lewisville 2025 Vision Plan and with the special use permit approval criteria listed in Article 3.9.2 of the Unified Development Code. Planning and Zoning Commission recommended unanimous approval 5-0 on September 5th, 2023, and it is recommended that the City Council approve the ordinance as set forth in the caption above. We do have Mr. Richard Lutke available to give a small presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Gilmore. Bear with me one moment while the presentation loads. Just have a short presentation tonight to give you a brief overview of the project and to give you some additional details about some of the issues related to this request. First, I've got a series of maps just to kind of give you some context. This is kind of a larger view of the eastern part of Lewisville. This image is showing State Highway 121 business along the top of the image. On the right-hand side is the Sam Rayburn Tollway. On the left-hand side, you'll see the Elm Fork of the Trinity River as it kind of meanders through that area. And of course, Leela is on the very top of the image. The blue line is our city limit line, and then the star is the subject site. So as you can see, the site is on the edge of a fairly large industrial area. This is a industrial area that has a mixture of different uses. It has some light industrial, it has some heavy industrial, and some uses that did require specific use zoning. To the very bottom left of the image is the Camelot landfill, and that definitely has a very large impact on this area. Most of the green there that you see below the star towards the middle is a creek and associated floodplain. To the south side of that creek, kind of southeast of the subject site, are a couple of mobile home communities. And then across the line in Carrollton, across our city limit line in Carrollton, are single-family neighborhoods. So to zoom in a little bit more, this image shows you the Barfnick Lane area. Barfnick Lane is a rather long, dead-end, two-lane street. It's accessed by Midway Road, which was just recently rebuilt by the city. It's about 1,600 feet in length. The west or the eastern side of Barfnick Lane is predominantly has frontage by the Metro Auto Auction. So you can see that very large parking lot here on that eastern side. On the western side, I think historically had been some small cottages, but most of those had converted to different types of businesses over the years. There are just a handful of homes on Barfnick. There is a single-family residence immediately adjacent to the subject site that is owner-occupied. Right across the street to the west is another single-family residence, but that one is not owner-occupied. And at the very end of the street, at the western end, is an existing single-family home, but that is owned by Republic Hauling, and that will be demolished as they expand. So you can see on this map, Republic Hauling's parking lot there is on the left-hand side. They will be expanding towards Barfnick Lane and then to the south. I do have some images that will give you a little bit of idea of the area and the characteristics of that project that will be coming along here in the near future. Again, this blows up the site again a little bit closer, and it does show the site. The site is the shape of we call it a panhandle or a flag lot, so it only has access to the street just by their driveway. That driveway is, or that panhandle is 50 feet wide. And then, of course, the portion of the property that will be developed is further to the east. And like I said, I mentioned the two homes, and then the undeveloped land to the south, like I said, is owned by Republic Hauling. You can see one of the mobile home communities, Oak Tree Lane, right there on the bottom right hand of the image. Just to give you some really brief history on this area and this site, this area of the city was annexed in April of 1987. So it's been in the city for over 3 decades. The area was zoned light industrial November of 1987. So shortly after annexation, the city at that time even envisioned this area continuing to further develop as industrial. As at that time there were quite a few industrial developments in that area at the time of annexation. And then we had a couple of very large developments come in that really changed the character of that area. The Metro Auto Auction received SUP approval in June of 2014. And again, that covers 41 acres. So it does dominate this entire area. And then more recently, Republic Hauling received specific use zoning in October of 22 for their expansion. And again, I will have an image that shows you what that will look like. This is a concept plan for the proposed cricket sports facility. As you can see, their building is located kind of on the western side of the square portion of their lot. It'll be a 19,200 square foot building where they will have indoor practice facilities for cricket. Their practice fields then are located on the eastern side and separated by a parking lot. When staff originally began discussing this project with the applicant, they were originally thinking of having the practice fields on the western side. But part of the SUP process is to look at any potential impacts of any use on surrounding properties. And with the residents immediately to the west, we recommended that they really switch those two to provide a buffer for that residence to the west side. And you can see the residence shown there in the dark gray, the footprint of the house, and then the footprint of a detached garage. Now, there is an issue that garage does encroach over the line. I think that's been an issue between both of the property owners. Not something really that staff really gets into, and the applicant is here tonight and can probably provide you a little bit more information about that issue. And then again, too, you can see the southern portion of the property is really undeveloped. I think it's highly likely that they'll have to use some of that portion for detention when they develop their drainage calculations as part of their engineering site plan. But they cannot use that for their practice fields. They are bound by this concept, and the practice fields can only be, they can operate practice fields only in the location as shown on this concept, since this concept is attached to the SUP ordinance. These are the elevations for the proposed building. The west, east, and north elevations are primarily stucco, and they have stone accents around their entrances. The south elevation will primarily be metal panel. And then the landscape plans, you can see, they already have quite a few mature trees. Those are those black dots that are in between the building and the residence to the west. So those will already there to provide some good buffering for noise and for visual purposes. They are augmenting that with additional new trees, and they're also putting trees along their driveway and in their parking lot. Quite a few more trees than what is required. There was an issue with the public hearing notice. It was put into the mail on August the 4th. Staff did realize at this time on this project and several others that the city's third-party vendor for mail was a little slow in getting those out. And we did have some members of the community say that they received their letters just only a few days before the public hearing. But we did have signs up, so most people did see the signs, and that's the whole purpose of the sign, in case there is a delay for some reason. But staff has rectified that, and staff is now stamping those letters here at City Hall and hand delivering them to the post office so that those letters do get to our residents as soon as possible. And that is a copy of the standard letter that does go out. There was also a comment about there not being any detail. We typically do not put a lot of detail, and you'll see the very last line does say, for more information, contact City of Lewisville Planning Department with our telephone number and our email address. And most of our residents do reach out to us if they do have questions, because it would just not be feasible for us to send out these packets. They're usually sometimes 30 to 40 or 50 pages, and that would be very expensive to mail, and most people would probably just throw them away if they're not interested. This is a copy or an image of the Republic Haulings of their expansion. So the portion to the kind of the upper left-hand side is the existing facility. So that lighter gray is going to be the new parking lot that's directly west. So outlined in red is the boundary of the subject property. And you can see that Republic will be installing a much-needed cul-de-sac, because right now there is no place to turn around. Most traffic that does wander down this street end up turning around in private driveways. So that will be a really good improvement to that. That access into the Republic site will only be for their employees. It will the garbage trucks will not be using that. They'll be using the Huffines entrance. As you can see to the south, or really kind of southwest of the subject site, that area shown in gray is where the garbage trucks will be stored. And then I also want to point out too, the two dark gray lines along the bottom here is the soon to be under construction corporate drive that we are all very excited about. So again, there's a lot of development occurring in this area, really changing the nature and the character of this area. This chart just lists a few of the multitudes of uses that are currently allowed by right on this site. Again, this site is zoned light industrial. One of the more popular uses in that district citywide have been distribution warehouses, and those can be 24-hour operations. I will remind you, we do have a food distribution company on Garden Ridge that developed before the neighborhoods did, and it's a 24-hour operation, and we've had many conversations with the neighbors because of the truck noise that occurs at nighttime. So there can be some negative impacts when you have that type of an operation. But other uses that could go there would be any type of office, retail, different trades like HVAC, electricians, plumbers. And again, those are very, landscapers, those type of businesses are very plentiful and common in that area. I want to point out that an indoor sports facility without outdoor fields would also be allowed by right. So it would only be a staff approval process. The only reason we're here tonight with the SUP is because of the outdoor field and the negative impacts that it could potentially create in the area. Another one that I did not list on here that I want to mention are churches. We've had several churches look at this site, and many times churches have outdoor amenities that can create some issues with surrounding property owners. So I also wanted to point that out. Some other issues, I just got kind of a bullet list here. Lighting. The development must comply with city lighting standards regarding intensity and glare when adjacent to a residential property. That is, they will have to provide a photometric plan and show that they will not have any intensity over 0.2 foot candles on the property line adjacent to any residential properties. They also have to shield any lights in the vicinity of a residence so that there's not any glare or spillover. Another issue is the street condition, and we do realize that this is not a standard street. It is about an 18-foot asphalt street. Fairly smooth though, and I think a lot of that's because it does have very light traffic. It's had light traffic for many years. It's maintained by the city of Lewisville. It is a public street, and it has open bar ditches on the side. Again, those bar ditches are maintained by the city. If there are any issues, we urge property owners to contact the Public Services Department, and they will promptly address those issues. And again, if there are any additional issues with ruts or with potholes, again, that is something that the Public Services Departments do a really good job citywide. A similar situation would be a railroad street between East Main and Business 121. You may recall that street was in pretty bad shape because of all the traffic that was on it, and it was recently upgraded. Wasn't built to full standards, but it was, a new asphalt was applied. It's much smoother, it's a little bit wider and a little bit safer for the traveling public. So again, that's a really good example that could be applied to this location as well if issues do arise.
I was also gonna add to that. So we were looking at what we had for street escrow for Barfneck, and we do have funding set aside for Barfneck Lane. We could do similar to Railroad and asphalt rehab on that project with the money we have.
Then again, drainage has been brought up as a concern. And again, just like any new development in the city of Lewisville, part of the engineering site plan process, a full drainage study has to be done. Calculations have to be done so that adjacent properties are not impacted by any additional drainage. That's usually handled by detention. Fortunately for this site, most everything flows to the south towards the creek. So again, that's good news for the two residential properties to the west. Again, for noise, again, we worked very diligently with the applicant to place the outdoor field as far away as possible, about 300 feet from that existing residence. And it's shielded by the 19,200 square foot building. And again, that building's about 27 feet tall. So that will serve as a very good buffer, along with the existing trees and the new trees that will be planted and that will mature over time. Screening, as far as screening, the applicant is providing a 6-foot screening wall adjacent to the residence to the west with a 30-foot landscape buffer. And that is quite a bit larger than what's required. We normally require a 10-foot buffer, but because they are adjacent to residential, there's a 25-foot building line, so they did move the building a little bit further back as to not impact the residential property in a visual manner. The only other thing too, I believe that was brought up was the driveway. The staff is able to grant an administrative modification for the driveway spacing because this is a flag lot. They only have that 50 feet of frontage. So the end of their radius will be pretty much at the property line. And then there is a residential driveway immediately adjacent. The presence of this driveway, once it's constructed, will have no bearing whatsoever on that existing driveway. That resident will be able to enjoy his driveway as long as he lives there, as long as he wants to. So there will really be no issue with those two driveways. We have many examples throughout Lewisville where we have two driveways side by side. In an ideal situation, we like adequate spacing, but there's just some situations where you can't get that. And on a very low volume street, it's typically really not an issue. So with that, I would be glad to answer any questions. And as I mentioned, the applicant is also available for questions.
Well, Richard, I just wanted to clarify, I appreciate the presentation, and I'm glad that you put this in here. Really, this is an SUP strictly because there's an outdoor practice field.
That is correct.
So without the outdoor practice field, this would be allowed by right, and there would be really nothing we could do to stop this development, because it is, allowed by right here, right?
That is correct. They would just
So-
have to meet minimum standards as they go through the development process.
Okay, so, and along the same, vein, we can't deny, legally, we cannot deny somebody a driveway to their property, right?
Correct.
So there's really no if, and, or but about us giving a variance for the driveway spacing, because we have to allow them to have a driveway, and this is the only location that it can go because it's a flag lot.
That is correct, and that is approved by the city engineer who, looks at these things to make sure that they are safe.
Okay. And so, and then when we get to the operating hours, I assume that the 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. is guided by the city noise ordinance, is that correct? Because that's not a variance listed here, right?
That is correct. Many businesses, that's fairly typical for this type of a use. I believe the early morning is just for, staff primarily. I think their busy time when they have patrons is typically early evenings and on weekends. Probably something, very similar to the traffic you see at a city park or like even at Railroad Park. It has its peak times, during the evenings and weekends. But it is open during, normal business hours for their staff to do their work and to be on site.
Okay, so I was just curious, because I do understand the concern about the noise, so long as there is a residential use right adjacent. So, but I was trying to differentiate in my head, how, are there gonna be people at 7 a.m. out in the practice field, or is that really more of a intermittent, because there's fields inside too, right? So do we have any type of feel for how much that outdoor field gets used?
I would defer that to the applicant. They can provide you quite a bit more detail on the operations. Would you like them to come forward?
Oh, yeah, are they here?
We do have the developers here. to
Okay.
speak. And Mr. Ronald Weigel, if you would please state your name and address for the record, the public hearing is now open.
Yes, Ronald Weigel with Endurance Development.
Thank you, sir. I know you would like to speak in support of this, but I would also entertain that if you can to address
Yeah, absolutely.
Councilmember Green.
I would assume with conversations with the owner about 30% of the time. Yeah. As far as specifically as hours of operations, they left that broad because this is a fairly new business venture for them, so they're trying to gain as much traction as quickly as possible, rather. Yeah.
Okay,
But the outdoor would be about 30% of the time.
okay. And, you know, just in light of being a good neighbor, I would encourage that, you know, them to try to limit the use of the outdoor fields as much as possible in the early morning hours.
Sure.
You know, I don't think that that's anything that I mean, that's not a variance here, so just, you know, just a brief comment of mine, about the noise. Otherwise, I mean, I don't see an issue.
Mr. Weigel, do you have any other comments to make?
Yeah, no, we're very excited to be part of this, are privileged to be part of this project as cricket is gaining a lot of momentum. You know, Grand Prairie has issued their former baseball stadium into Frisco is bringing in a development with cricket. The Colony is, and we're actually negotiating a 9-acre outdoor facility, not a facility, but practice fields in Grapevine. So it's gaining a lot of, even on our end of the country, Raleigh is developing outdoor practice, indoor and outdoor, forgive me, and as well as Charlotte. Yeah, so it's gaining a lot of popularity.
Council, any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, I want to go back to what Kristen was saying about the outdoor facility. If you can pull up just a second, which one is it?
Side plan, sure.
The slide that has both on there.
The one to your left there, Bob? Ron?
Yeah, that one. I mean, I'm trying to pull it up on my stuff over here, and it's right here. So basically, that's why I pulled this up, to see what was over here. The impact that I see from the practice fields, what would not even be this house over here, because that's buffered by your trees, your screening fence, and this huge building. It's going to be, dadgummit, that's right there. It'll be the mobile homes down here that are impacted. Am I reading that correct?
As far as the auto dealership, is that what you're referring to?
No, there's
The field will be up here, but it's still buffered by all of these trees right there. Okay. You know what they say when you start answering yourself in your head?
Yes,
So
ma'am, no, I understand, yeah.
you don't have to agree with me on that.
One question.
Right.
I will state that we do have support with Berkshire Hathaway. They're excited that we're their neighbor, becoming their neighbor potentially, yeah.
Right.
One question, is there any opportunity maybe on the, I guess, the left side of the property to make that an 8-foot fence instead of 6 foot? I know if I was looking at this, maybe an 8-foot
Well, I
fence.
think we're required to follow what the SUP or our zoning requires, is the 6 foot. We're going to mimic what the auto dealership has as far as the precast, so there's some consistency in it.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So I have a quick question here. So what was the formula to determine the number of parking spaces? Because I only see it's about 45.
That was through the process, as far as maximum occupancy.
So when I think about, and you're right, cricket is growing all over the place. And I'm starting to envision these practice fields being used for tournaments and now people parking all along the road,
No,
along the
not
side.
at all. These, I didn't mean that.
No,
These
go
are
ahead.
like batting cages is all they are. There will be no games. That's all
okay.
they are.
Fair
Yeah.
enough. Thank you for that
Yes, sir.
clarification. It helps a lot. Thank you.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize. Yeah.
Other questions? Thank you, sir. Unless you have
No,
something
that's
else.
it. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
We also have, for public comment, Mr. Michael Mahoney, here to speak in opposition. And Mr. Mahoney, if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Gilmore. My name is Michael Mahoney, and I live at 527 Barfnick Lane, Lewisville, Texas, 75056. I live in that house adjacent to the property. I've lived there 17 years before the surge of population and before the great plan of 2025 Lewisville. And I really, when I bought that place, I thought that would be it for me and my family. So I just want to first clarify that we have no issue with whom and what the business is or in any way. We just want to address the criteria for approval for the SUP and the effects in the area. So in the Lewisville special use permit approval guidance, it states contributes to, enhances, and promotes the quality of life for residents of the development and adjacent properties, is in scale with existing neighborhood and the neighborhood as it develops in the immediate future, mitigates any adverse impacts due to access, parking, service areas, traffic, adjoining properties, and the street network in adequate manner. And keeping in that mind, I just want to start with the about the compatibility that this is a commercial entertainment special use permit, and there's nothing like that anywhere close around. I think Railroad Park is the closest, and then there's a church one off of 121 Tollway. So it's just not the same as anything close to us within residence or the industrial or any of the businesses. All the businesses are 9 to 5 businesses, operation hours, and we all live peacefully that way. The Republic is you know, basically the same. There's no noise impact. You know, once in a while when they drop a container here and there, but that's it. The Metro Auto Auction is a quarter-mile away, their activity, so there's no impact noise. The concerns have been the hours of operation and the traffic on the unimproved road, and just basic the plan, how the plan is drawn up. So on Barfnick Lane, it's a narrow street. It's really only just a one-car road. There's no drainage. There's no street lights. There's you know, city planning department had made statements that my security light is a street light to Barfnick, and that's absolutely just not true. There's no lighting at all. When it rains, the auto auction drains all its west water into a culvert under Barfnick, and it floods over the top of the street. We've notified the city numerous times for years without any since auto auction's been there since they put that there. But you don't even know if it was permitted because it wasn't there originally, because they put it there after they built the auction. And the auction also has a 10-foot fence, 6 feet of it being cast, 4 feet of it being electrified fence that borders this new development that's concerning for safety of cricket sports demographic of, you know, probably mostly youth and young men. So that doesn't seem compatible and is a safety factor and welfare for them, for that particular development. And then as far as community facilities, there's no, you know, for several miles, there's no restaurant shopping that these patrons would, you know, or these people using this facility would patronize. They come, mostly them come from Frisco and Plano, according to what the owner told me. The owner had told me that it was going to be basically youth-based, 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. use in high concentration and on the weekends. And they didn't tell us that till right before, you know, all this was happening. And the developer wasn't truthful about any of it in the beginning, and it caused a disruption in trying to mitigate these adverse effects. Then the economic vitality is, you know, like I said, the developer and the owner's not from the area. It's, you know, they said they couldn't afford the areas out in Plano, so they found this place, which makes sense. The long-term plan states, the Lewisville long-term plan states employment attraction mainly, and to sustain by assisting its residents and businesses in major employment centers, which this isn't an area of. It's pretty, honestly, it looks industrial, but it's fairly quiet, still very quiet neighborhood. And when it comes to the welfare of the area, like I said, the safety, the noise, and the traffic is mainly the thing. The streets unimproved, unsafe. We have transient workers that work at the landscape facilities that walk down the middle of the street in the evenings and the early mornings. And the demographic would probably be most parents with children, teenage drivers going up and down the street. So I feel that that's just an added safety factor that we're concerned about as neighbors. We have small children. The street has a bus route from ISD. And the plan kind of, so one of the concerns for my neighbor was headlights going into their living room, during the hours. So, our preference would be like a 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. operations would be more acceptable. That way we wouldn't have that type of traffic at that late at night. And then it's sports facility. It's any active sports is very noisy. It's a lot of yelling and screaming, and we have neighbors that have parties. It sounds like it's in their living room. So I mean, we can talk about the buffer, but I mean, realistically, acoustically, it's still going to be a factor at those hours. So, and as Councilman had mentioned about the mornings, that's very considerate. And I'm an early riser, so that's not a big deal for me. But 7 days a week, 10 a.m., 10 p.m. at night is definitely going to factor in to the well-being of the neighborhood. So, like I said, I think maybe the Planning Commission maybe been distracted by some of those things that they said about the lighting's not an issue for us, but the noise, the late night, the traffic at late night is more of a concern. That we don't, we've lived there, we know what it's like, and to make assumptions on we don't expect or or it should be, that's not how we would, mitigate, is by assumption. So, that pretty much addresses all of that particular type of area. So of what we consider the criteria for approval. Like I said, those three things that.
Mr. Browning, you have about a minute and a half left. Just giving you time, you've got about a minute and a half.
I just have a couple more things.
Yes, sir.
So the driveway variance, if they wouldn't put the variance on me, or the ordinance on me to comply with the driveway, that would be acceptable for any future development on my property. An 8-foot wall on both lines of property would be more than acceptable, and then the hours of operation would be something to consider. And I would beg the council to postpone an approval until we can mitigate these adverse impacts at this time. So I think that's it for everything I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Mayor, I have a couple clarifying questions.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Kay, did you have something you want to go first?
Yeah, I was gonna ask him. It was light industrial. Your property was even light industrial when you bought that, right?
The title company told me it was open ag.
They can't arbitrarily change it.
I know, I understand that. I've been asking the city for years when they changed it. It wasn't until just recently that the planning manager had notified me that it had been changed before I'd moved there.
Oh, before you moved there?
Yeah.
But upon closing, you knew that things all around you except for a couple of parcels?
No, the title company says it was open ag. So the auto auction wasn't there. Nothing was there. It was all residences. There was a church. It was a normal neighborhood. So they had only, according to the ordinance of 87, they said it only came up to just the top of my property line.
Back in the 80s, like I said, several large pieces were rezoned, and the zone change that included the subject property and Mr. Mahoney's property was in November of 1987, Zone
Right,
2 Light
so,
Industrial.
yes, they were like that when you bought it.
It was, but the title company represented it as open.
But sir, you have to use your own due diligence.
I did.
For
I
this.
hired a title company to do the due diligence for me, and they didn't. I'm not
Okay.
saying, I'm not blaming them for this, and
Oh, well, if I was in your shoe and I was opposed to it, and they told me ag open, I'd be blaming them.
like I
That's
said,
just-
I've been pursuing the city for this information for years, and they wouldn't, until this came up, did they actually present it to me. I mean, it's been, they've just been email after email that would just bury me into one ordinance to the next, and it's just been a real frustration
Who did you send those emails to? Because I'd like to know.
to the planning manager.
This was the first time I'm aware that we had gotten a request to verify when the original zoning was approved.
Oh,
Yeah, I personally come into this office many times over the years.
do you still have any copies of those emails? I'd love
Yes,
to
I
see
do.
them.
Of course.
I also, you realize that the way it is zoned now, that if we did not grant the special use permit,
I understand that, and like I
that
said,
everything could still go. They wouldn't even have to come to us for everything except the outdoor practice fields at the very
yes,
back.
I totally understand that, and I'm only addressing the criteria for approval for, as far as it is the impact it has to the community and the neighborhood. And if the hours were different, it wouldn't be an issue. If the fence was approved, we've asked the city for a variance, and it hasn't been a cooperative negotiation with the developer from the beginning, because it just wasn't truthful. We presented documents to sign that were nothing of what we agreed. I mean, it's just been very frustrating for me as a resident, and I feel vulnerable and taken
Right.
advantage of and lied to, not just by the property people, but the city itself.
So were you presented documents to sign?
Yes, to approve this SUP originally. If I agreed, they came to me and I agreed to, and asked me what they could do for me. I just wanted security and privacy, and they said they would do that, but they neglected to tell me anything about what they were gonna do about operation of hours and that particular stuff. So, as I said, I'm only concerned about the hours of operations, disrupting our neighborhood, and the privacy and security.
About that. I've got a question about the operation of hours, because we have nothing to do with that. That's already set by ordinance. Is that correct?
Really don't have any limit. You can set hours of operation, and since the applicant did propose 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week, that would be their hours. But if this were a permitted use, that's, either like say if it was a sports facility without outdoor fields, then there would not be any limit on the hours of operation. Same would go for any other permitted use like an HVAC company or a
Right.
distribution warehouse. They could
Or a
operate.
manufacturing company, can't
Light
they come in here
manufacturing.
too?
Yes.
Mm.
Now, the council does have the ability to make a condition to modify those hours if you so choose. And also, I will add that they are subject to, as all properties are in Lewisville, subject to our nuisance requirements and noise.
So I guess my question would be, would the applicant be willing to restrict the hours of the outdoor practice fields at all, and be willing to add that language to the SUP to help alleviate some of the,
I think Mr. Weigel's going to come up here and address that.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely. We could maybe entertain 10 to, at the evening hours, starting at 10 a.m. to give a break as far as early morning hours, as Mr. Mahoney has stressed a concern.
Stress the morning hours, just the evening.
Well, most people, as this business of operations, they're going to come in the evening hours. That's how they're going to pay their bills ultimately, during lunch hour and probably from 3 to in the evening, yeah.
Because the kids are in school and
Will you give me a second,
working.
please? I'm sorry?
The kids are in school, the parents are working.
Right, that's it, yeah. Yeah. I will stress, we have, as developers and the owners, we have tried our best to appease Mr. Mahoney. As the planning director mentioned, there is a concern with his detached garage setting 7 inches into our property. We've been in communication with Mr. Mahoney. He also demanded another 8 feet on the offset of the northern portion, which we're condensed. We're really tight there with the drive and the utilities and so forth, and we couldn't. We told him there's just no way that we couldn't provide that. We couldn't agree to that. But we did go ahead and direct our surveyor to, through the planning process, to offset that 5 foot, that boundary line that's a concern 5 feet. They're a quit claim deed. Sorry, that's kind of a tongue. So all that is resolved. It'll be up to Mr. Mahoney to hire an attorney and surveyor. He can include that, and everything is resolved for him on his behalf, because we committed to doing that and we're moving forward with it. We just couldn't do the northern property, or the northern, which the gentleman referred to as a panhandle, because we're just so tight. We had to cease communication at that point. But everything has been very transparent with Mr. Mahoney, and I'm going to refrain from discussing the other circumstances that we've dealt with, because I know time is of the essence, but we have generally done our best to appease Mr. Mahoney as much as we could. Was there any other questions for me, or?
I don't have questions for you directly, but first off, Mr. Mahoney, thank you for speaking. I know that is a hard spot to be in, and I realize that, so thank you for coming and taking your time and speaking with us. I appreciate that. I do think that Councilwoman Cade hit the topic that I wanted to make sure about, but that is the only special use that that's being asked for is for the practice field in the back. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted clarification. Thank you.
May I discuss those practice fields?
Sure.
Our structural engineer is going to design a beam through there, concrete with heavy poles and nets. So there's a safety precaution that we are designing and installing and constructing in that area as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Council, is there any other questions? Gentlemen, thank you both for coming and stating your case and the outcome. Did you have anything more to add?
I have two small things.
If you could keep it brief, sir.
Yes, sir. It's just, there is litigation on the boundary line because of where the assumed line is and the garage. So there is litigation in process now. And then just the 8-foot fence with, and that the variance applies to me too on the driveway. That's all my request is.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I do.
Do you have another question?
Adding to that, when he was talking about the litigation, but again, the litigation has nothing to do with the special use permit. Because everything is allowed in light industrial as it is, except for the practice fields. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
It's the practice fields that's triggering the overall SUP for the whole development.
Okay.
Right, they also have to completely redo the utility, which will disrupt mine and my neighbor's utilities for whatever time that takes. That's another issue that.
I can't, I'm sorry. I can't hear you when you're talking back there.
I'm just saying that the utility poles are right in the middle of their practice field, and that's gonna disrupt mine and my neighbor's power for whatever they decide to do with that. They haven't made any discussions to us about it.
Okay.
That's all.
Gotcha. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Council, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. Public hearing is closed, 6-0. Council, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the SUP
As set forth in the caption?
as set forth in the caption.
All right.
To add, if the applicant's willing to put in the restricted hours on the outdoor practice field from 10 a.m. Would that be okay?
Okay, with the restriction of outdoor practice field time starting at 10 a.m.
10 a.m. to 10 p.m.
to 10 p.m. And nothing earlier in the outdoors than 10 a.m.
I'm sorry, one more time, make sure I,
You said 10 a.m. to 10 p.m.
On the outdoor.
restriction. On the outdoor.
yes,
Outdoor only.
yep.
Because he
The
would be
building
allowed by
is-
right
Right,
to
right,
operate from 7
correct. So
a.m. indoor.
that is added.
So indoor is still 7 to 10?
Yeah.
Correct.
Outdoor, okay,
Correct.
absolutely.
Council, I'll entertain a second.
Oop.
I have a second from Councilmember
Kelly.
Kelly. We've got Cade and Kelly. All right, we good?
What a
City Attorney.
combo.
This is an ordinance of the Lewisville City Council amending the zoning ordinance by granting a special use permit for commercial amusement outdoor on approximately 3.175 acres out of the S.M. Hayden Survey, abstract number 537, located east of Barfneck Lane, approximately 1,540 feet south of Midway Road, Zone Light Industrial District, providing for repeal or severability, penalty, and an effective date, and declaring an emergency.
Council, if you please vote. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming and communicating to us about the project. Thank you. Public hearing, item 2, consideration of proposed fiscal year 2023-2024 fee schedule. A public hearing on the fiscal year 23-24 fee schedule is being held to provide an opportunity for public comment. In addition, Local Government Code Section 214.908 was amended this year to require the building permit fee of a municipality to be abolished on the 10th anniversary after the date the fee is adopted or most recently authorized, unless the municipality's governing body holds a public hearing on the fee's reauthorization and reauthorizes the fee will be effective in January 2024. Rather than holding a public hearing once every 10 years on the reauthorization of these specific fees, staff recommends a public hearing be held annually on the entire proposed fee schedule. Proposed updates in this year's fee schedule include changes to Grand Theater fees, Wayne Ferguson Plaza rental, special event fees, engineering inspection fees, utility rates, water, sewer, and solid waste, fire prevention permit and inspection fees, library fees, building permits, health and code enforcement, Old Town Development Plan submittal fees, and parks and recreation fees. And it is recommended that the City Council conduct a public hearing. So the public hearing is now open. City Secretary, do we have any public comment? All right. Council, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. Motion passes 6-0. Item 3, public hearing, consideration of the proposed tax rate of the 2023 tax year. In accordance with state law, a public hearing is being held on the proposed tax rate for the 2023 tax year. Council has proposed reducing the tax rate by .024222 to say it to 0.419079. Section 2605D of the Texas Property Tax Code requires the governing body to hold a public hearing to adopt the tax rate for the current tax year if the proposed rate exceeds the lower of the voter approval or no new revenue rate. The total tax rate proposed for the fiscal year 23-24 of .419079 exceeds the no new revenue rate of .392761 by 6.7%. The proposed total tax rate does not exceed the voter approval tax rate of .419079. The proposed tax rate was recommended by City Council at the budget workshop held on August 12, 2023. An agenda item to adopt the 2023 tax rate is also on tonight's City Council meeting. It's recommended that the City Council hold a public hearing as set forth in the caption above, and the public hearing is now open. Council, or City Secretary, do we have any public comment?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
All
Mr.
right.
Mayor, before we move on, the screen is stuck on item number 2.
Yeah, it is. Our screen.
Yeah.
Our friend, the Votecast. There we go.
Oh, there we go. Now we have to do that over again.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. Motion passes 6-0. Item E, Visitor Citizens Forum. Speakers must address their comments to the mayor rather than to individual council members or staff. Speakers should speak clearly and state their name and address prior to beginning their remarks. Speakers will be allowed 5 minutes for testimony. Speakers making personal, impertinent, profane, or slanderous remarks may be removed from the meeting. Unauthorized remarks from the audience, stamping of feet, whistles, yells, clapping, and similar demonstrations will not be permitted. In accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, the City Council is restricted from discussing or taking action on items not listed on the agenda. Action can only be taken at a future meeting. We do have some speaker cards that have been filled out. First up, Arnie Block. Mr. Block, if you could please state your name and address for the record, sir.
Yes, sir. My name's Arnie Block. I live on 2317 Clearview Court. And I'd like to address you today because I owned a home over there for about 25, 26 years. There is an Airbnb that is right next to me. I bought the home considering that my kids would raise their kids and my grandkids would go on down the line. But it's going to be hard for them to raise kids not knowing who's going to be living next door to them day by day or week by week. That's a real concern of mine. Also, I have a neighbor that has PTSD and one across the street from me that has PTSD. You never know what's going to happen in these homes. Any firecracker or anything could set them off. They've been in Vietnam. There's been incidents that I know of that has happened that is not good. And that worries me. There's situations that are not good in the area when they come around. And there's a lot of traffic, as you know, that we discussed last week. Also, if this is going to be where you're going to have a hotel going to be in there, is this not going to be zoned commercial or should it be zoned residential? Which one's it going to be? I mean, if it's going to be zoned commercial, we got to zone it commercial, and then I'll put mine up for Airbnb. That's my concern. So we can't have a residential and a commercial area. So it's got to be one or the other. So that's my concern there.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for yours. Rebecca Rector. Name and address for the record, please.
I'm Rebecca Rector. I live at 2337 Clearview Court. I'm on the other side of Clearview. I don't have a short-term rental right next door, but I am seeing the effects of it. There's 10 houses that are right on the lake. And out of those 10, 3 of them are short-term rentals. 2 of them are empty. So we only have 5 occupied by homeowners on that street right now. My family's been there since 1983. And this is just a travesty, what's happened to our neighborhood. The people who have bought the houses that have gone for sale have way outbid people who would have made homeowners, who would have been like homeowners. These corporations have way overbid because they know that getting a short-term rental on a lake is going to be profitable for them. So that has increased my taxes. But that does not mean that my house is worth more, even though I'm paying more in taxes, because short-term rentals have been proven to devalue having short-term rentals next to you or in your neighborhood. They devalue your home. Why should these homes, have more rights than me, than my house? It's zoned residential. We expect the city to make rules that tell you what you can and can't do with your property. For example, you cannot open a bar, a restaurant, a gas station, or a hotel in a zoned residential neighborhood. These short-term rentals are hotels. They don't have to answer to all the rules that regular hotels have to answer to fire, all the safety features that hotels have to go by. They don't pay taxes. And all it's doing is ruining our neighborhood. I can tell you that this was a very quiet neighborhood. Nobody knew we existed. We're in a quiet cul-de-sac. It's safe and secure to live in. And now there's noise, there's trash, there's traffic, there's strangers in our neighborhood. Now, you don't know if these people are decent or not, but I can tell you that the traffic has increased a lot because I have it going off on my camera all the time. And I don't recognize the cars. I don't recognize the people. There's been bonfires down on the beach. There were people last weekend swimming right in front of my house, making all kinds of noise. I want the city to make short-term rental not legal in residential areas. If they do short-term rental in a commercial area, okay, if it's zoned that way. They can pay taxes like any other hotel. The longer this continues to go, the more risk we could face. It's been well documented that drugs, noise, and potential harm increase with short-term rentals. There's been gunfire, prostitution, sex trafficking, drugs, and parties in short-term rentals, and they create threats to homeowners. A home's value is depressed just by the possibility of short-term rentals will set up next door. Even quiet short-term rentals can diminish the safety and quality of a neighborhood because they reduce the number of true neighbors. The eyes of the neighbors on the street create more safety than police. Neighbors can spot an unfamiliar person or a parked car. Neighbors know the predictable rhythm of the neighborhood life. Short-term rentals disrupt that pattern and camouflage intruders. The stream of strangers coming in and out of a short-term rentals disguise the bad actors.
Ms. Rector, that's your time.
Excuse me?
That's your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Gary Ferguson? Name and address for the record, sir. Thank you.
My name's Gary Ferguson. I live at 1111 Firewater Circle in Lewisville. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your time and attention to address the short-term rental crisis that is unfolding in our city. I apologize for not speaking up at the workshop. I misunderstood the instructions about no comments being allowed and wanted to respect the rules. I'd like to begin by paraphrasing from the Lewisville City Council's transparency page, which says, thousands of years ago, native tribes established camps and villages in what is now Lewisville. Later came settlers who built schools and churches because they were creating a home, a place to raise families and develop a community. Today, this very community is facing a clear and present danger. The rapid rise of mini hotels disguised as STRs is beginning to hijack our community and homes, one block at a time. Over the past weeks, members of the Texas Neighborhood Coalition, Lewisville chapter, have been voicing our concerns about this growing issue in our city. Specifically, we are troubled by the operations of many hotels disguised as short-term rentals, whose only goal is turnover maximization without concern for neighborhood impacts. These are not single property owners trying to make a few dollars renting out rooms or their own homes. These They don't care for the neighborhood or city, and many don't even live in the city and operate hotels in many different areas. Today, I want to shed light on the consequences of short-term rentals from a neighbor's perspective. Just give me 1 second, sorry. While discussions about density, property rights, HOT taxes, and other factors are important, it's crucial to recognize that people living next door to these transient properties live in fear. The fear that we have is the loss of peace, the loss of rest, the loss of enjoyment of our homes. We fear the loss of our property value and even the ability to sell to escape from this nightmare. Over 88% of residents polled in Indian Oaks would not want to live next to a mini hotel. I'm sure if you polled all of the members of this esteemed location, you would find similar things from everybody at this place. Why is this carrying on? Hotel taxes in Lewisville earned in 2022 are a tiny fraction of the loss in value just one family can suffer from an STR in their neighborhood. As a mayor whose Facebook intro includes protecting property values, we look to you, Mayor, to address the impact of these short-term rentals on neighbors' values, as you know this is of a concern to you. Many short-term rentals may experience fewer issues, but these large purpose-adapted party house properties accommodating more than 8 people create significant repetitive disruptions to our lives, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our rights and nights are being overshadowed by these party houses that bring stress, depression, and danger to our neighborhoods. They create nightmares, not neighbors. It is important that these properties are immediately addressed so that repetitive, persistent, and ongoing disturbances stop. Tell me when you've had enough. We've had enough. A detailed incident log has been created with recordings over 30 hours to further provide data and evidence and will be made available on request to the appropriate parties. In conclusion, Mr. Mayor and Council members, please consider the plight of your constituents who are losing basic rights due to the unchecked greed of STR operators, particularly large capacity party houses. We look forward to working together to preserve the sanctity of our neighborhoods and protect residents' rights. Lewisville should remain a home for its people and not just a party place for transients. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Ainsley Stelling? Name and address for the record, please.
Ainsley Stilling, 1001 Forest Park Drive. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. According to AirDNA, which is a website that tracks active short-term rentals and as investment opportunities, the active short-term rentals in August was 145 for the city of Lewisville. Today, it's at 164. That's a 13% increase in 1 month, which is a 34% increase year over year. Needless to say, our STR growth is tremendous. And without any city regulations in effect, it's just going to get worse. Now, I know that council is very well educated, so I'm going to take you back to Econ 101. And I know you remember the supply and demand curves, that when supply increases, demand goes down. And what do you do to price when there's too much supply and you want to remain competitive? You drive price down to bring demand up. With the lowering of prices, stereotypically, the quality of clientele decreases. I have read numerous posts by Airbnb superhosts asking their own community, how do you curtail unruly and rowdy guests? The recommendation is always raise your prices. But as you can see, this methodology doesn't work if you want to remain competitive. I saw this firsthand when our third short-term rental opened up in our neighborhood. The first two average prices were over $500 a night. The third one opened up at $300 a night. The first two dropped immediately $100 to $200 from their original prices. So I've witnessed this firsthand in my neighborhood. So where does that leave us as neighbors and as residents? If lowered prices attracts less than law-abiding short-term rental guests, the risk of having to police and more closely monitor these short-term rentals increases. This directly impacts our feelings of safety and security for our own homes and our families. It also increases the burden of police and code enforcement as we look to them to help remedy these situations. This privatized profit socializes the risk taken on by neighborhoods and city personnel. I pray that the city does not prioritize revenue from hotel occupancy taxes or any other kind of taxes over the quality of life of its long-term residents and constituents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. City Secretary, do we have any other public comment?
No, sir, that's all.
Item F, consent agenda. All the following items on the consent agenda are considered to be self-explanatory by the council and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests. For a citizen to request removal of an item, a speaker card or e-comment must be filled out and submitted to the city secretary. City Secretary, do we have any requests for removal?
No, sir.
Council, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. Motion passes 6-0. Item G, 12, regular hearing. Consideration of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lewisville, Texas, amending the previously adopted and approved budget ordinance for the fiscal year October 1, 2022 to September 30th, 2023 by providing supplemental appropriations to the various funds, providing an effective date, and declaring an emergency. The purpose of this ordinance is to amend the fiscal year 2022-2023 adopted budget to include all supplements and changes approved by council throughout the year. Appropriations include the routine supplements completed each year for prior year encumbrances, purchases that overlap into the next fiscal year, items presented in the mid-year report in May, as well as appropriations that can correct year-end balances. It's recommended that the City Council approve the ordinance amending the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. And council, I will entertain such motion.
Move to approve the ordinance as set forth in the caption.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. City Attorney?
This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lewisville, Texas, amending the previously adopted and approved budget ordinance for the fiscal year October 1, 2022 to September 30th, 2023 by providing supplemental appropriations to the various funds, providing an effective date, and declaring an emergency.
Council, if you'd please vote. Item passes unanimously. Item 13, consideration of an ordinance adopting the fiscal year 2023-24 tax rate. This action will adopt the city's annual ad valorem tax rate for all taxable property at .419079 per $100 of assessed valuation. Council has proposed reducing the tax rate by .024222 from the prior year rate of .443301. The proposed tax rate combines the following: maintenance and operations, .296759, and principal and interest on debt service, .122320, for a total tax rate of .419079. The proposed tax rate exceeds the no new revenue tax rate of .392761. Therefore, specific language is required in the ordinance. The vote on this ordinance must be a record vote and approved by at least 60% of the members of the governing body. For the City of Lewisville, this would equal at least 5 voting members. The motion to adopt the ordinance must be made using specific language as found in the recommendation below. Council, it's recommended that the City Council approve the proposed ordinance about adopting the fiscal year 23-24 tax rate with the following motion. I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of .419079, which is effectively a 6.7% increase in the tax rate. Council?
Mr. Mayor, I move that the property rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.04190079, which is effectively a 6.7% increase in the tax rate.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. City Attorney?
This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lewisville, Texas, establishing the tax rate and tax levy for the City of Lewisville, Texas for the year 2023-2024 upon all taxable property in said city in conformity with the laws of the state of Texas and the charter provisions and all ordinances of said city, providing a repealer, providing for severability, providing for an effective date, and declaring an emergency.
Council, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Item 14, consideration of an ordinance amending the fee schedule of the City of Lewisville by amending fees related to community relations and tourism, engineering,
Hey, Mayor?
finance. Yes.
On the last motion, can we just do that again? I think we left a word out.
I think we left a word out? Okay.
I think you said property rate, not property tax rate. But can we just do it over to be sure?
Sure thing. Councilmember Jones?
I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.04190079, which effectively is a 6.7% increase in the tax rate.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'm sorry, did you say, I'm really sorry.
He did.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
What did I miss?
You said .04.
Oh, okay. I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.419079, which is effectively a 6.7% increase in the tax rate. Did I get it that time?
Yes.
3 times charm.
All right, I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Do you need to read it again?
Let me just go ahead and read it again. And this is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lewisville, Texas, establishing the tax rate and tax levy for the City of Lewisville, Texas for the year 2023-2024 upon all taxable property in said city in conformity with the laws of the state of Texas and the charter provisions and all ordinances of said city, providing a repealer, providing for severability, providing for an effective date, and declaring an emergency.
Council, please vote. Vote passes unanimously. Item 14, consideration on ordinance amending the fee schedule of the City of Lewisville by amending fees related to community relations and tourism, engineering, finance, fire, library, neighborhood and inspection services, parks and recreation, planning and development and public services, and authorizing existing fees as presented in the attached fee schedule, Attachment B. As part of the annual budget process, changes to the fee schedule based on an analysis of current charges as compared to cost recovery goals and/or compensation to surrounding entities is conducted. In addition, fees are reviewed to make sure they are still applicable. Resulting modifications are proposed by the departments. Actual fee schedule information is located on the city's website within the finance section. This repository is maintained by the city manager's office. Proposed updates in this year's fee schedule include changes to Grand Theater fees, Wayne Ferguson Plaza rentals, special event fees, engineering inspection fees, utility rates, water, sewer, and solid waste, fire prevention, permit and inspection fees, library fees, building permits, health and code enforcement, Old Town Development Plan submittal fees, and parks and recreation fees. It is recommended that the City Council approve the ordinance as set forth in the caption above. Council, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the ordinance is set forth in the caption.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. City Attorney?
This is an ordinance of the Lewisville City Council amending the fee schedule of the City of Lewisville by amending fees related to community relations and tourism, engineering, finance, fire, library, neighborhood and inspection services, parks and recreation, planning and development, and public services, and authorizing existing fees as presented, providing for repealer, severability, and an effective date, and declaring an emergency.
Council, please vote. Motion passes 6-0. Item 15, consideration of an ordinance of the Lewisville City Council amending Chapter 3, Division 3, Animal Services Advisory Committee, Section 3-52, to provide that the requirement that the committee members be citizens or business owners in the city or citizens of the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction does not apply to certain member positions mandated by state law, providing a repealer, severability, and an effective date, and declaring an emergency. The current ordinance requires that all Animal Services Advisory Committee members be citizens or business owners in the city or citizens of the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction. This requirement is shown to be difficult when trying to fill specific vacancies on the ASAC. The proposed amendment will modify this requirement by removing it for the licensed veterinarian, the person with duties including daily operation of the shelter, and the representative from an animal welfare organization. Adding this exception broadens the applicant pool for potential committee members, which will help fill vacant positions faster. It's recommended that the City Council approve the ordinance as set forth in the caption above. Council, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the ordinance as set forth in the caption.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. City Attorney?
This is an ordinance of the Lewisville City Council amending Chapter 3, Division 3, Animal Services Advisory Committee, Section 3-52, to provide that the requirement that committee members be citizens or business owners in the city or citizens of the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction does not apply to certain member positions mandated by state law, providing a repeal or severability and an effective date and declaring an emergency.
Council, please vote. Item passes 6-0. Item H, reports. Reports about items of community interest regarding which no action will be taken. Councilmember Kelly, you mind starting with you?
Very excited about Western Days coming up. There will be council members in the dunk tank on Friday, so please come out and heave softballs. Not this Friday. This is Friday the 29th, right?
Yes, Friday the 29th.
Yeah. So feel free to come out and heave softballs at us and throw us in the water. So that's all I have.
No, throw softballs at the target.
Yeah, not at us, at the.
I'm just trying to raise the maximum amount of cash for Serve Lewisville. So
Yeah,
I think
if you're throwing them at me, there's an added fee. Thank you, sir. Councilmember Green?
I just want to clarify that the mayor's not going to be allowed to sit there and push the button over and over again.
Fair. That's fair.
He's not
Even
gonna be allowed to.
even at an increased rate?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
No report.
Councilmember Cade?
I just want to say thank you to staff. Y'all, this last 8 days has been absolutely insane for us. And y'all, and I know we've put y'all through the ringer on some things, and thank you. I just want to say thank you very much. And thank you. I love this. I just got a challenge coin. Hey, look, you can all aspire to have one. I got the, oh. This is so cool, because I just realized, you know, when you first said fishing, I love to fish. And then I got this and I went, but I just realized that this is
the other
it's
kind
a
of fishing.
computer chip. It's the other kind of fishing. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. And again, Chris McGinn, your staff, we've had to work on so many different issues, and I know I get impatient, but just bear with me, and thank you so much.
Councilmember Meredith?
I also want to say thanks to the staff. This PBR weekend's definitely one of my favorite weekends. I think between the parade and the rodeo, and I think I even saw our own city manager helping out a parks worker with a trash bag. So that's all the staff. Also, I've got some library activities for the week. Hispanic Heritage Celebration for families with children of all ages, Tuesday, September 19th, 6 to 7 p.m., Bennett Program Room. Animakers, Anime Plus Makers for teens aged 13 to 18, Thursday, September 21st, 6 to 7:30 p.m. at the Hive Makerspace. And that's all I've got.
Councilmember Troyer?
Yes, Mayor, first of all, I echo what Councilmember Meredith said about PBR. It was a great weekend, and thank you to the staff that helped make it happen, come about. I do have a number of items that are going on at the Lewisville Grand Theater during the coming weeks. First of all, in terms of performances, Julia Grunbaum, a grand prize winner of the 2023 Lewisville Lake Symphony International Competition for Harp and Strings, will be is presented by Lewisville Lake Symphony on September 22nd. Night Illusions, a magic show benefiting Uganda shoe trees, presented by Mill Street House and Repeat Realty, September 23rd. And as always, on Friday nights, the acoustic jam sessions presented by the Visual Art League of Lewisville. Activities, a Garden Secrets class, Cacti and Succulents, presented by Keep Lewisville Beautiful on September 21st. the Frida Kahlo Effect film screening and artist conversation presented by the Lewisville Grand Theater and Visual Art League of Lewisville on September 23rd. There will be no yoga in the plaza or Tai Chi in the plaza or Pilates in the plaza on Thursday or Saturday this coming week, or the week of the Western Days, I'm sorry, week after. Exhibitions going on, Reflections of the West, an exhibition by Robert De Leon, presented by City of Lewisville through September 30th. Deep in the Heart of Texas, presented by Cross Timbers Artists Guild through September 30th. Chaos and Order, presented by the Visual Art League of Lewisville, September 23rd through October 21st. And Botanical Works by Brenda Gribben, presented by City of Lewisville through November 18th. And that is all I have.
Thank you, sir. City Attorney, City Secretary,
No report, Mayor.
Mr. Lutke?
No report, Mayor.
Nothing? I know we got something here.
First, I'd like to report that there's not a single 100-degree day projected for the next 10 days. However, the lake level is at 80% at a level of 517.6.
Thank you, sir.
Just wanted to give everybody a heads up. The building's going well. The Public Safety Center, if you haven't been by there, take a look. Garage is coming out of the ground. We have some good drone video. If you want to see that, let me know. I'll send it to you. Concrete is no longer requiring ice to be mixed with, because of what he just said. All the piers are, for the current phase, are complete. Last level parking structure is done. Steel work for the fire station's coming out of the ground. Framers will begin work by the end of the month, so you're gonna, things start to shape up. We have some parking things that we're gonna be working on over the next couple of months, so you're gonna see some of that going on. So things are really starting to move fast. The crane will be coming down, and it's just going really well.
Great. Thanks, sir. Chief? Chief? I know he's hiding at the back, but yeah, no, it comes to you. I want to thank everybody who's out there doing the work. I mean, it's pretty awesome. City Manager, what have you got?
Just wanted to thank staff. It has been a wild couple of weeks of getting stuff to council, but also I did want to thank on PBR. It was a great event. And then also Dave Erb seems to get all of the attention about the budget. So I wanted to budget and tax rate. So I wanted to thank Deanne Tompkins as well as Ashley Carlisle for your hard work.
We've got a couple of brief things. Want to mention that our Youth Action Council kicked off tonight, and our Citizens University kicks off on Thursday night. So we have a whole bunch of new residents who are looking to get really educated on how the city operates and give their input. So really appreciate all the folks that have signed up and are going through those programs. This Friday is also the 40th anniversary of the Lewisville Lake Symphony at the Lewisville Grand Theater. So they have a harpist, I believe, coming in for that. So it sounds to be a great event. And then Saturday, we've got a couple of items here from the Parks Department. On the 23rd, it's National Public Lands Day, and what they're asking is for everybody to participate in a bio blitz. So if you guys have, and I think this was really good for kids, but I know some adults that do this really often too. There's an app called iNaturalist, and if you put that on your phone, you can actually do citizen science. So you go take pictures of the critters that you see, the wildlife, and it gets submitted into a database, and we can kind of see what's going on, and you build those reports. So you can actually do science right off your cell phone. So if your kids are bothering you and you want to go for a walk, tell them to go find bugs and use iNaturalist. It's a pretty awesome thing. And then the other, that BioBlitz actually is going to be on from 9:30 to 12 p.m. at Leela's Cicada Pavilion. So if you go out to Leela and do the hike, you can do the BioBlitz out there. But you can do it anywhere in the city. So it's pretty cool. And then we also have a 7:30 p.m. event called Light Cycles. This is a great opportunity to learn about bicycle safety, and you can volunteer or participate. You want to find out more, just go over to the city website, go to Parks and Rec, and they can get you more information. With that, I don't believe there's any more action for us to be taking on tonight's agenda, and therefore we are adjourned. It is 9:04 p.m.
William, we got some stuff in here we gotta take with us.